Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Drake Toll. He does great work with the Locked On Big 12 podcast. We're going to be talking all about what we've been seeing out there in the Big 12. No doubt about it, taking a little bit of a look at both Iowa State and Kansas State. Few teams out within the conference he's a little bit more stock up, stock down on, how the travel has been affecting things as well, and take a look at a few teams from a national perspective that he's got his eye on, both in terms of the positive and the negative as well. So, gonna have a fun chat there in segment number 2. In the final segment, gonna get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any of those Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Now, I will say this before I go any further. Do have to record this a little bit in advance. The Greg Peterson Experience that is on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, from 9 to midnight Pacific time. That would be midnight to 3 Eastern time. So I do need to record this while we still have a few games hanging in the balance. We don't know how Virginia Tech Boston College turned out quite yet. Currently just starting up the second half of Houston versus BYU for the sake of the DK Network write-up. Hopefully BYU can make a comeback. They were down 7 points at the half, so we shall see what happens there, but we don't have a few set results there, so we'll need to do some cleanup tomorrow, but for the most part, a lot of what we did see on Tuesday is in the bank, so let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The top cover team in all of college basketball found a way to cover once again, as for Minnesota, they were down in this game throughout, and as a matter of fact, they got down in this game, I believe, as much as 15 points, but they're able to rally, and they're able to get the cover as about 2.5 to 3 point underdogs, 61 to 59 against Wisconsin. Now, 16 to 3 against the spread for Minnesota. They do go 10 of 24 from 3-point range, as for Minnesota, your hero in this one, Elijah Hawkins, he's able to go off for 16 points, did have 4 turnovers, but 9 assists, and for Wisconsin, they go 7 of 17 from 3-point range, with A.J. Soar chipping in there 15 points, 12 rebounds, but was a Wisconsin team that just didn't get enough buckets late to be able to get you a cover, so Minnesota, they're able to slide in there with a cover that was very, very hairy, but still able to get the job done in that one. Kentucky, they get dropped by South Carolina by a count of 79 to 62. It's been a Kentucky team that has been able to make you quite a bit of money all season long, but they just went cold with regards to their three-point shooting, and as a matter of fact, they just couldn't get up a lot of three-point shots. South Carolina, very meticulous with their defense in this one. For Kentucky, they go just 4 of 13 from 3-point range. Robert Dillingham off the bench was able to give you 16 points, and A.J. Reeves still had 14 for Kentucky. Only 8 turnovers, so they were still relatively efficient there, but South Carolina, they just controlled the perimeter. 11 of 24 from 3-point range. Taylon Cooper, 20 points. He had 0 turnovers, 5 assists. A very efficient day there, and for South Carolina, they win the rebound battle by a count of 36 to 33 as well, so a very impressive win for South Carolina. Team that is now 14-5 against the spread. Kentucky, not too shabby themselves. They're 11-7 against the spread. As I am doing this, Missouri is currently 4-14 against the spread. Down at the half against Texas A&M, 30-25. We will see if they're able to improve that mark or not, but they certainly have been one of the worst teams in the Power Conference of being able to make you money. Duke, they were able to get a relative push on a lot of openers in this game. Some places close as a 14.5 point line, and Duke, they win by 14, 83 to 69 against Louisville. They were able to get a over in this game with Tyrese Proctor being able to go off for 24 points. Louisville's been a little bit more respectable. They do go 5 of 17 from 3-point range in this one, with having Brandon Huntley-Hatfield go for a double-double, 20 points and 11 rebounds. But for Duke, they win the rebound battle by a count of 43 to 28, and Kyle Filipowski, he continues to be awesome, 17 points, 15 rebounds, and there was question marks as to whether or not Mark Mitchell was going to be able to play in this game. He played, and he played quite well. He was able to chip in there 20 points, 12 rebounds, so that was very impactful for the Duke Blue Devils. This was impactful for a Texas team that has been really scuffling recently. They were able to get that win against Baylor. Now it feels like they're starting to cook with some gas. They go on the road, and and they take it to Oklahoma by a count of 75-60 for Oklahoma. Just a rough night from three-point range for them. They go 4 of 19 from three-point range. Texas, Max Asmus, he's able to go for 22 points, 4 of 8 from distance, and you had a pair of guys combined for 23 rebounds in Dylan Mitchell along with Dylan Dessou. Dessou was able to chip in their 19 points. He has been a massively impactful player for this Texas team ever since he's been able to come back, and does feel like Texas, they are getting back to being on the right track. They've still been a little bit of a money burner thus far this season against the spread. Texas currently clocking in at just 6-13, which is so better than Oklahoma State, who's at 5-11-2 against the spread, though currently as I am doing this podcast, they are leading at the half against TCU, but certainly it's been interesting to watch those teams and how they've been able to function and operate thus far this season. The way that this team has been able to operate thus far this season has been all gas but no brakes. Florida State, they're playing very up-tempo, and they were able to take it to Syracuse late in this one. 85-69 the final. Florida State was essentially up by a point with about 9.5 minutes remaining, and then they just make a big giant run towards the end of this game. They were able to go on, I believe it was something like a 27-13 run to be able to close out the game. Jameer Watkins goes off for 27 points for Syracuse. They allow Florida State to go 6 of 17 from three-point range, so massively impactful win out there in the ACC, and a nice one for the Florida State Seminoles being able to go on the road. This was the eyesore of the night. Bonaventure and Duquesne had a combined 23 points through 15.5 minutes in this one. Duquesne, they get their first conference win of the season. It was very nip and tuck late, but they are able to get it done. 54-50 the final. As for Duquesne, they very nearly blew this cover, by the way. They were up 49-33 with 5 minutes remaining. Duquesne then gives up a 17-5 run towards the end of the game, but they're barely able to hold on. As for St. Bonaventure, they go from three-point range, 2 of 13, and they shot 27% from the floor with 16 turnovers. Duquesne, they had 15 turnovers. This was a very nip and tuck and just all over the place in general game, so that was a little bit of fun out there for Loyola Chicago. They've actually been able to cover quite a few spreads recently, but on all the last 2 seasons, they've been a bit of a money burner. They're unable to cover against VCU by a count of 74-67. This was a game that was pretty much even up with about 8 minutes remaining, and then VCU was able to utilize a nice run late. Joe Beshmili, someone who was out of the fold towards the beginning of the part of the season as one of those two-time transfers, he made a big impact in this game for a VCU team that went overall 9 of 15 from 3. Beshmili goes 5 of 8 from 3. Loyola Chicago as a team, they went 4 of 20 from distance. Even though Loyola Chicago wins the turnover battle by a count of 12-9, hard to be able to offset that. So a nice win for VCU. If you're looking at a team that has really not been able to make you a whole heck of a lot of money, that would be Northern Illinois. And, well, they got completely lambasted by Toledo. Old Toledo was able to get the win. They're able to get the cover by a count of 89-73 for Northern Illinois. They're now 5-10 against the spread for Toledo. They were able to have Raheem Moss go off for 20 points in this one, as for Toledo, 8 of 18 from three-point range. Meanwhile, for Northern Illinois, they go just 6 of 25 from three-point range in this one. They've been dealing with some injuries in the front court, and clearly they're just looking like a team that's a little bit out of sorts, but a team that's in sorts. Western Michigan is now 12-6 against the spread, 73-56. They got slowed down a little bit on offense in this one, but very easy win for an Eastern Michigan team that has been just rough, to say the least. 14 points out of Ty Acuff. They just weren't able to get anything around them, and for Western Michigan, they do lose the turnover battle 16-9, but they win the rebound battle by 12, and Owen Lobsinger was able to give you 11 rebounds, so that was a nice result out there. Team has been pretty solid recently. Bowling Green, they fell short in overtime against Kent State by kind of 90-84. This game was very much just all over the place towards the back half of it, so that was one that was a little bit rough, especially if you had the under in that game. But this team has been a very pleasant surprise out there in the Big 12, and they continue to be that tremendous team. Central Florida, 72-59. They're able to take down West Virginia. Central Florida, by the way, now 11-7 against the spread for West Virginia. They actually go 11 of 28 from three-point range in this one, still dealing with the injury to Jesse Edwards. And for Kirk Risa, it was a full Kirk Risa experience. 9 points, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 3 turnovers out of him. And for Central Florida, they did a very solid job being able to win that rebound battle by a count of 45-34. They commit just 11 turnovers, and Abrima Diallo, 3 blocks, 14 points, 12 boards. Like I was mentioning, got a few games in the balance touchdowns. BYU, by the way, looking to get right back into this game against Houston. They're down 3 with about 16 minutes remaining, so we're going to hope for that one. And right now, Creighton in a bit of a nip-and-tuck game against Xavier, about 7 minutes remaining in that one. Creighton up by kind of 68-64 with Creighton coming alive from three-point range, 9 of 24 from distance, but Xavier has committed just 4 turnovers in the first 33 minutes of that game. That's been a little bit of a sore spot for this Creighton bunch, not being able to create turnovers. And as I'm doing this, would doubt if they're going to be able to pull this off outright, but would be interesting if they did. Wyoming currently up 41-38, early part of the second half for this game against San Diego State. Wyoming has started off 7 of 12 from three-point range, and San Diego State 4 of 20 from three-point range. They are currently winning the turnover battle 10-0 and losing the game. That is something that you do not see very often. So we shall see how that shakes out. Going to have a little bit of cleanup on the podcast tomorrow. And if you're taking a look at what we're seeing trend-wise in college basketball, it's been really interesting over the last 7 days. Home underdogs are having a rough time of it. We have still got a few games for Tuesday to wrap up, but 43, 57, and 2 against the spread for these home underdogs. Meanwhile, overs, they are hitting. 56.7% of games are going over the total. I guess St. Bonaventure and Duquesne were trying to make up for all those overs. 178 overs, 136 unders, and a few pushes along the way over the last 7 days. And if you take a look at the entirety of the college basketball season, the overs are hitting at a rate of 51.8%, 1,609, 1,495 to the under, and then you got a few pushes along the way as well. And home underdogs having a little bit of a rough go of it, 394, 404, and 15 against the spread, and that's despite the fact that home teams hitting at about 50.8% against the spread thus far this season. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, we're going to be talking some Big 12 and taking a look at the national landscape with our good friend Drake Toll of the Locked On Big 12 podcast right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as he's the host of the Locked On Big 12 podcast. It's Drake Toll joining me. He does a tremendous job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. He does a tremendous job on the football side of things as well. And, well, there's never a shortage of things to talk about with regards to college football with all these coaching hires, with the transfer portal, and who knows if some of these college coaches, I'm looking at you, Jim Harbaugh, decide to move on to the NFL as well. As to be able to follow Drake on Twitter, that's easy enough. At Drake, the letter C, and then Toll all together. And Drake, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, great to be here. If there's one thing I love talking about, it is basketball in the best conference in America as well. So happy to join and give a little Big 12 flair today.
Absolutely. And Drake, I do need to get your thoughts on what we've seen in the first few weeks of the Big 12, because my biggest takeaway is that home court advantage, while it always means a ton in the Big 12, there's no question about it, it feels like it just has amplified in how much it does truly mean, just because with the travel being a bit more spread out, with teams having to go to the state of Florida, having to travel out to Utah to play BYU, I do think that now it's even tougher to win on the road in the Big 12 than it was before, which was already a very daunting task.
It's the toughest conference to win on the road in far and away. Not only is the hardest conference in general, but you look at if I go to DePaul, and I think the Big East is still the second best conference in college basketball, especially with St. John's and how much better they've got. But if I go to DePaul, I'm not that worried. Now, if I go to West Virginia, as we saw with Kansas 91-85 loss, I'm worried. If I go to Gallagher-Iba in Stillwater, Oklahoma, we saw Baylor struggle there a couple of weeks back, and it seems like Oklahoma State's still giving people fits at home or on the road. You saw 70-66. They could have and maybe should have won the game against Kansas State late. You look at a UCF who also knocked off Kansas at home. What you're seeing, a lot of teams that are better will go on the road, play an inferior opponent at their place. I still think Kansas is better than UCF. I know Kansas is better than West Virginia, but they lost by virtue of the fact that this road gauntlet in the Big 12 is awful. It's tough to win. And honestly, Greg, to say that, you still have to count yourself blessed when you win as the home team, because the amount of close games that we've seen in Big 12 play. I'll pick on a team like Texas. That win against Baylor at home was massive because now they have Oklahoma, BYU, Houston, TCU, and Iowa State on the docket. They move into the first week of February with 5 ranked games, 3 of those coming on the road as well. You don't get a break. At home or on the road, you don't get a break, but especially on a night where you're not in your own gymnasium, it's tough to win.
Yeah, it certainly is tough to win. And I feel like the Big 12 out of all the conferences, they've got the fewest amount of breaks as well, because in the Big 10, even though it is a relatively brutal conference to win on the road in as well, we have seen some of these teams like a Penn State, even though they've won a few games, it's been a little bit up and down for them. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it out there in the Big East. I mean, DePaul right now, George Mikan is rolling over in his grave watching what we are seeing there. That is clearly the worst team in that conference. But even though there is, in my opinion, a clear bottom team in the Big 12, and that would be West Virginia. Not sure how their Tuesday game turned out against Central Florida as we record this. They're a team that's starting to rise up, and if they can get Jesse Edwards back in the fold, that could be one of the toughest, shall we say, bottom dwellers out there in all of these power conferences in general, just because with this West Virginia team, they still have a really good home court advantage, even though they're visibly down this year.
Yeah, that's one thing that you can never count West Virginia out for, and that is the home court advantage because of the passion of the fan base. They know, Greg, that the card that they were dealt. Look, the fans had nothing to do with what happened with Bob Huggins. This is one of the most passionate groups in the Big 12 because in West Virginia, there is not professional sports. Their NFL, their NBA is West Virginia Mountaineer Athletics. They didn't cause the turmoil that has made this basketball season so tumultuous, so they still show up. They still give their all for the university because it's not, there are some places where you get the T-shirt fans. At West Virginia, to be a West Virginia fan, you've got to be ingrained in it, and you've always been ingrained in it. And that's what makes it a tough place to play. Not only that, who's got the convenient travel to West Virginia? Nobody's hopping on the bus to go 45 minutes. You go from a Baylor down to Austin. You go from TCU down to Waco. Even from a TCU, Fort Worth to Lubbock, you're looking at an hour-long flight, hour-and-a-half flight. West Virginia is tough to get to. You couple that with the passionate fan base, and look, they're not going to make the tournament. They're going to finish below 500 this year, but they just beat Kansas. They're going to beat teams in Morgantown because that's just the culture at West Virginia. I think they could even be dangerous in the Big 12 tournament because by the time you get to that, Greg, we're already beaten up. This league is already beaten up. By the time you get to the Big 12 tournament, all bets are off. I have no idea what's going to happen. Even Oklahoma State, who's struggled to buy a win, could scare some people because Mike Boynton, in my opinion, is still a good basketball coach, a capable basketball coach. I could have argued that Oklahoma State or West Virginia are your nights off, but they're just not. There is no night off.
Yeah, there truly is not. As Drake told, he takes no days off himself. He does amazing work over at the Locked On Big 12 podcast. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And what I think is interesting about the Big 12 right now is the two teams that entered into the week, number one, Kansas State and Texas Tech. Don't think a lot of people had that on their bingo card. And when it comes to what we're going to be getting on Wednesday, this Kansas State versus Iowa State game, I do think that it's so interesting because if there is a team I think is going to see a little bit of regression, it's Kansas State, a team that I still remember. They win by 1 in overtime at home against North Alabama. They had that nip and tuck game out of conference against Villanova. This team, time and time again, heck, they were taking overtime by Oral Roberts, but they seem to just be finding a way right now. I'm not sure how you take a look at Kansas State because I do have my red flags, but every single time this team is in a close game, it feels like they pull it out. Sans that game, ironically enough, against Texas Tech.
Yeah, it reminds me, Greg, of 2022-23 Kansas State. I guess that's what Jerome Tang is going to do. It's not always going to be pretty, but he's going to find a way, and he's going to do it in different ways. We've seen Kansas State dominate defensively. What comes to mind immediately is that game against Central Florida where they allowed 52 points. We've seen them win when they struggle offensively. They only put up 62 against Chicago State, 62-55. You could argue that's the ugliest win that they put together this season, but they still got it done when the shots weren't falling. To me, the one thing that I circle with Kansas State that might be a hot topic right now and something that a lot of people want to balk at because the name is so big in college basketball, I don't think Tyler Perry is there yet. I don't think he can be the catalyst to go win you a game in March late, give the ball to him, and he's going to be reliable. He is a free throw king. He's going to take contact. He's going to get it to the hoop. But right now, I haven't seen enough consistently out of Tyler Perry to say that Kansas State isn't just lightning in a bottle that could escape. Again, I'm not going to bet against them because Jerome Tang did it last year and they had an unbelievable run late in the season, and they're going to do, I think they could do that again. I'm going to need more from Tyler Perry for them to win the Big 12. I do think by the time we get to the end of this, they're sitting at 4th or 5th in the conference, which is still nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, Ben, when it comes to this Kansas State team, certainly I don't think that Tyler Perry is what we saw to Marquise Noel last season, but I'm very impressed by Arthur Kaluma as well. He's a guy that I had some question marks with coming coming out of Creighton, and it feels like his game is just such a more advanced version of it this year, especially with the way that he's been able to pop threes. So I've been very impressed there. And then on the flip side, for this Iowa State squad, I had my questions coming into the Big 12 season with two teams, Iowa State and TCU, just because they really hadn't played a lot of teams out of conference, just to call it what it is. And for Iowa State, ironically enough, to go on the road and knock off that TCU team on Saturday, I thought was very big. And really, with both of those teams, I did have my question marks with them, and I feel like both have done a very good job of responding and have looked very good in Big 12 play, despite the fact that they probably didn't have the world's greatest test coming into Big 12 play.
Tamin Lipsey's a name that we have to talk about a lot more. 5.5 assists per game, 3.5 steals per game.
And they won without him.
Yeah, and that's a guy that, with or without him, if you can put it together, if TJ Otzelberger can put it together, you're going to be just fine. And that they're the number one team in America defensively per shot quality. That travels. That goes home. That goes road. They lost that game at BYU. They allowed 87 points because BYU's offense has been shockingly good. They can put up points against anybody. On a night where they're on, they are unbeatable. But then Iowa State, on a night where they're off for a large period of time. Look at the game at TCU. They go on a beautiful run to start the ball game, and then TCU comes crawling back, has an opportunity to win. But Iowa State, timely defense, gets it done. Held Oklahoma State to 42 points. Very similar to Kansas State, actually, Greg. I'm not going to bet against Iowa State. They have shown me too much, once again, that is very similar to what TJ Otzelberger has given you in the past, which is just knockdown, drag-out defense. When that culture is instilled, when these teams start looking similar and they win games in similar ways year over year, that's when you know, this is consistent enough to understand these programs are here to stay. Iowa State is one of those.
Iowa State has been just so tremendous on the defensive side of things, and I do think that there's still some fair question marks with regards to the offense, but Tamin Lipsey, last year, he was an all-defense player, not really a lot of offense. He and Keyshawn Gilbert have really been able to elevate with regards to their offense. So do love to see that, as Drake Tolo does great work over at the Locked On Big 12 Network, is joining me on Coast to Coast Soup. And Drake, I know you do a tremendous job just taking a look at this game of college basketball. Certainly the Big 12 is your forte, and it can be the Big 12. It can be someone else. Over the last few weeks since we last chatted, is there a team or two that really stands out to you, whether it be to the positive or the negative, that has really been catching your eye? Because we've been seeing a lot of surprises here in conference play all across college basketball over the last few weeks. Have there been just a few teams in general that have really been catching your eye?
Yeah, let me give you some fool's gold to start. To me right now, Baylor is probably in that category because you've seen them play fairly lackluster on the road or at home. I go back to the Oklahoma State game in Gallagher-Iba. I go to the Texas game where Scott Drew just failed to put his team in a good position in the last 8 minutes. They had one field goal the last 9 minutes, which was a game-tying bucket, then just forgot to play defense late. I'm not sure if Baylor, because of the youth that leads them from Yves Missi to Jacoby Walter, will be a second weekend team in the tournament, because I think a team like a Baylor, a team like a BYU, they're going to play a Big East squad in round 2 in March and get bullied. I foresee that happening for both of those squads, just not enough of a presence inside and defensively, physically for those two teams to win late. Surprises, again, even though I knock BYU, they are a tournament team. Their offense is very impressive. And while those two schools will be fool's gold in March, I believe that by the time we get there, Kansas will have put it together. They are still in my top 5 in the country, without a doubt. I believe that Kansas State puts it together and goes to the Sweet 16. And I think finally Iowa State shows that defense can win championships. Will they win a national championship? Not yet. I can't go that far. But them being number 1 per shot quality defensively in the country has to go somewhere. Those teams, Greg, ready for this? Those teams the last 6 years who are ranked 1 in shot quality's defensive metrics have all gone to the Sweet 16, aside from Iowa State last year. They're going to follow that up this year with redemption. They're going to make a run. I think those are some of the sturdiest teams in the Big 12. Right now, I'm going to sell on Baylor, BYU, and Texas. I'm going to buy on Kansas, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Kansas State.
Yep, I like all those teams, and I'm so glad that you brought up Kansas as well, because I think what we all know about Kansas is that this team has a really good, I'm going to call it Big 4. KJ Adams has been solid for them. We all know about Hunter Dickinson, Kevin McCullough. Would like to see a little bit more offense from DeJuan Harris, but
yeah,
he's one of the best point guards in all of college basketball. I think the one question I have right now with Kansas is who's going to be those number 5 and number 6 guys between the likes of Nicholas Timberlake, Johnny Furphy, perhaps that's going to be a Parker Brown, guys like that, to be able to step up, because this team has a really, really good base. I feel like they just need that one guy to step up, give them like 8 points, a few boards, maybe a 3 or 2 off the bench to really elevate them into that Final Four, which a lot of people are expecting that they're going to be able to reach.
Honestly, Greg, I have changed my idea about this in college basketball from the teams with the most depth will be the ones that win. I think the teams with the best starting 5 will get it done this March. As we've started to see, that's become consistent. Think about, I'll go back to Baylor. They're maybe the deepest team in the Big 12, got 8, 9 guys that could contribute night in and night out. But if that starting 5 is not as elite as a Kansas, if that starting 5 can't beat a Texas, then how much can you give me? Look, if you've got 8 guys that are all great, that's awesome, but you can't put 8 guys on the floor at the same time. A lot of these teams are conditioned well enough. All of them, the Big 12, are conditioned well enough. By the time they get to March, that starting 5 can give you the bulk of what you need to go win. And Kansas has the best starting 5 in the conference, and it's not very close. From DeJuan Harris, who leads the league in assists, to Hunter Dickinson, who leads the league in rebounding, to Kevin McCullough Jr., who leads the league in scoring. They have 3 different guys at the top of the main 3 categories in the conference. That is good. And they're going to be rewarded with that, with a conference championship at the end of the regular season and with a trip to the Final Four this year, because their starting 5 is that good. And you're right. They could use a 5th, a 6th, a 7th guy to come in and be an impact defensively, a spark offensively. But to me, in the end, as long as that starting 5 stays healthy, it is elite enough to push them to the finish line.
The top-end talent, it is certainly there with Kansas, and this is a man that is at the top of the top as well. Drake, you do absolutely tremendous work with the Locked On Big 12 podcast. I know you're doing amazing work taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball, so let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, so I am on the cusp of announcing a new job. I've moved to the East Coast and found a new little home this week. So you can go at Drake Seton on Twitter, at Locked On Big 12, where I will stay on the podcast realm. I'll be doing some day job stuff, a very exciting new day job that I've got. Would love for you to find out with me later on this week. That's at Drake Seton on Twitter. And Greg, always a pleasure.
Always great to be able to get Drake aboard. He does an amazing job over at the Big 12, at the Locked On Big 12 podcast, and every single time he joins this podcast, he lends amazing insights. So big thanks to Drake for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the XII Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the XII Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Drake Toll. He does amazing work over at the Locked On Big 12 Podcast. Certainly has been an interesting start to the season for that conference. I'm very curious to see what we're going to be getting moving forward. Out of all those teams, it is going to be a bloodbath. It is going to be very intense, to say the least, and we are here for it, and well, he's here for his good insight. So big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_D1, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, and then the games that are involving smaller conferences today. That's mainly the Big South and the Patriot League. I think we've got a little Atlantic Sun action in there as well. If you'd have any MEAC/SWAC games, those would be down there as well, but I don't think we have any of those, but those conferences will be the ones at the bottom. So how about if we get things started with 669, 670 on the betting board? It is VMI, and they're going to be playing us to East Tennessee State. East Tennessee State finds themselves as a road favorite between 8.5 to 9.5 points. Your total on this game between 153.5 and 154. I did set my total at a 152. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Maybe I'm just a schmuck, but after what we've seen the last few days, I just have a feeling that you're going to see a little bit more pride from this VMI team on defense. It's been utterly embarrassing. And the saddest part is, with VMI, they're actually allowing 4.3 points fewer per 100 possessions this year than they did a season ago, and it's not like they've really sped up their tempo. Just been a case where they caught Samford at the wrong time. They certainly caught Furman at the wrong time. I think they're a little bit better than what we've seen a bit earlier in the season, and they are going up against an ETSU team that they're not going to be looking to push the tempo too much. It's an ETSU team that's outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. It is an ETSU team that, as a matter of fact, has scored 73 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, and for VMI, it was a much better effort against the Citadel. They gave up just 63 points in that one, and for as much as VMI has been getting gashed on defense, they haven't done their part offensively. 70 points or fewer for this team in every single one of their last 5 games, and the lone game of which they have reached north of 70 on, really over the last 2 months, have been games involving overtime and games involving a D1, non-D1 school. Every other game, they have scored 71 points or fewer, so this has been a VMI team that has really not been holding up their end of the bargain with regards to scoring, though they do have down low Tashad Jackson, who's able to give you a little bit over 10 boards, 8.5 points per game, and like Brendan Watkins at the point guard spot. Shoots 37.5% from 3, 14.5 points per game. What has really been the undoing of VMI has been north of 16 turnovers per game, with this team that is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, it's not like they're going up against an ETSU team that's going to get you 100 billion steals. As a matter of fact, this team is a little bit more dominant on the glass, as got Jaden Seymour's able to give you about 6 boards, shoots it okay from 3-point range. ETSU about 170th in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So that does ascend to the top 125 in a road/neutral court environment. And the big key for VMI is just being able to guard the 3-point arc even a little bit better. That is where they have truly been getting gashed. VMI, about 206th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but that ascends to 37.1% at home. They are in the bottom 75 nationally when it comes to home opponent 3-point shooting percentage. For ETSU, having E.B. Asamoah be able to give you about 15 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and it's an ETSU team that only shoots about 29.5% from 3. I think that they get the job done, and with ETSU being much more efficient, 11.5 turnovers per game, I do think that they can win this game by double figures, but I think that this will be a bit more muted and slowed down from what we've seen in past games, especially with ETSU having each other top 5 scorers give you at least 4 rebounds per game. So I do think that you're going to get a lower scoring game, so my total 152 looking under, but with ETSU, made them 10-point favorite, so also willing to lay the number. 671, 672 on the betting board. Seton all plays those to Providence. Providence, a 3.5 to a 4-point underdog. Total on this game between 138 and 138.5. This was an opener of 3.5. We're seeing a few 4s pop up, and I do agree with the move. I set Seton Hall as a 4.5-point favorite, so 4 is the max I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. It is a Providence team that has been dealing with quite a few injuries. The main one being Bryce Hopkins, who has missed 4+ games already this season. Last time he played, ironically enough, was the team's last go-around playing against Seton Hall. That was a game in which Providence lost on their home floor by a count of 61-57 in a game where neither team could really sink anything from inside the arc, and it was just a slowed-down game in general. Both teams had 14 turnovers. Now, Seton Hall shot 7-16 from 3-point range in that one, and I do think that they are going to be not having quite as much success, but we have seen Lamir Dawes along Dre Davis really heat up from distance. Both of these guys are combining for about 20 points per contest, both shooting in that neighborhood about 36.5% from 3. For a Seton Hall team, that overall, they shoot 33% from 3, but they make their free throws at 77.5% at the charity stripe. Both of these teams do have their turnover issues. Both of these teams committing north of 13 turnovers per contest, so I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a sloppier game, and it is still a Providence team that ranks in the top 40 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. The Seton Hall team also has been a top 50 team on the glass with regards to rebound rate, as Jaden Mediaco has been able to give you 8+ rebounds per game. You've got someone like Kadari Richmond, who he just does it all. 16.5 points, 2 steals, 5 assists, 7 rebounds per game. Well, he does everything except for pop threes really well, and this is a Seton Hall team that they have ranked 213th actually with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they do a much better job locking down at home. Opponents are shooting just 31.1% from 3 against them at home, north of 39% in a road/neutral court environment, while Providence, they're ranked about 89th in the country with this regard. But I do think that Providence is once again going to have a little bit of a tough time on glass because you're going to have Devin Carter be Mr. Do-It-All for the team, much like Kadari Richmond. 18 points, 8 boards, right around 3.5 assists, and does shoot 37% from three-point range. 18 plus points in each of the team's last 4 games without Bryce Hopkins. But with Providence, you just don't have the depth to be able to maintain with having someone like Hopkins out of the fold. You've got someone like a Devontae Gaines who's been able to give you about 9 points per contest. In the absence of Hopkins, though, it's not like he's really elevated his game. Someone like Gary Duell has been able to give you about 4 points per contest. He's seen a few more minutes recently. He's been able to give you 7 assists in the last 3 games, but he's really not elevating this team. I do think that Seton might give up a few more points in this spot. First time around, this game was just an absolute slog, and it's a Providence team that, without having in the fold Hopkins, they have been suffering a little bit defensively. They've given up 69 plus points in 3 out of their last 4 games, but offensively, they honestly haven't been too bad. They've gotten to 73 plus in 2 out of their last 3 games, and this is a Seton team that they've heated up with their offense as well. Ever since the last go-around between these two, they've gotten to at least 74 points in every single game. I do think that things are going to be a little bit more slowed down, but I think that this game is close enough for Lake Felling. Did semi-total 138.5, so at a 138 looking over, and with Seton a little late before with them. 673, 674 on the betting board. LSU, its first face-off against Georgia. UGA is a 4 to 3.5 point favorite total on this game between 153.5 and 154. Both of these teams are starting to play some really good basketball, and I did set my number at 3.5. At a 4, I'm going to be willing to take the points with LSU. LSU did not have a point guard to begin the season, but with the 2-time transfers being able to become eligible, it's really helped them out because now you got Jalen Cook in the fold. He is your main point guard for this team. Darn near 3 assists, 15 points per contest. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3, but prior to him coming into the fold, he didn't have a single guy that was giving you north of 2.2 assists per contest. Now he's been able to work really in tandem with Jordan Wright, who's now been able to ascend with regards to his facilitation. 3 plus assists in each of the team's last 3 games, 15 plus points in every one of them. Love the way that the team has emerged, and for LSU, you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of about 5.5 or so rebounds per game. Wright is able to give you 5.6 rebounds per game. Will Baker's right around about 5.5 rebounds per game as well, but they do a solid job by committee. They're about 140th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, and that does trump the Georgia rebound rate of 210th. Though Georgia, they do have Russell Shea, probably going to be the best low post presence in this game with about 6.5 rebounds per game. It is a Georgia team that you've got 2 guys in the backcourt, and Noah Thomason, Jabari Abdul-Rahim, who have been able to do rock solid work. They're giving you combined 26 points per contest. Abdul-Rahim shooting 42% from 3 for a Georgia team that they take care of the ball. About 11 turnovers per game. They shoot 35% from 3-point range. LSU, by contrast, they've been turning the ball over more like 13 times per contest, but what this LSU team does is force turnovers. They are a top 50 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers force on a per possession basis. It is an LSU team that they're going to give up some open looks on the road. They're allowing opponents to shoot 36.6% from 3-point range in a road/neutral court environment. That compares to a Georgia team that is in the top 45 nationally with this regard. So that is going to be hurting this LSU team just a little bit, but I really like what I've been seeing out of this team ever since Jalen Cook has come back in the fold. And for this Georgia team, it has been a team that has been a little bit all over the place in terms of their defensive results. In their last 5 games, they have given up 68, 66, 85, 69, and 105 points. So certainly has been up and down there. Meanwhile, you've got an LSU bunch that has really been coming alive with their offense, 77 plus points in 3 out of their last 4 games. So an interesting something's got to give sort of scenario here. I do think that LSU holds up down low, and I do think that the improvement that we're seeing with the facilitation going to be able to keep LSU in this game, which is why I did set this line at a 3.5. At a 4, I'm going to be willing to take the points with LSU, and neither of these teams are really super up-tempo. Both of these teams are relatively mediocre, both offensively and defensively, so I think we've gone a little bit too far with this total. It is a Georgia team I think locks it down from 3-point range, so it did set my total 149.5, looking under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with LSU. 675, 676 on the betting board. It is Furman. They play host to Samford. Sam Amford finds themselves as a 2 to 2.5 point underdog. Totals between 168 and 169, and I set my total at a 172. I'm going to be taking a look at the over in this spot. This is a Samford team that is playing at warp speed right now, 4th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, going up against a Furman team that has been a sad excuse of defense, and they themselves 26th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now, Samford is actually 87th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Furman, 203rd. So buckle up for safety. I am looking at the over, but with Samford, I like them outright on the money line. I do think that this is going to be played right in their wheelhouse. I think that this is going to be an up and down game. I think that you're going to get a whole bunch of possessions and a whole bunch of wide open looks, as this is a Samford team that ranks in the top 20 nationally with regards to three-point shooting percentage. And for Furman, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 32.6% from three, 118th in the country. Very big home and road split. They're allowing opponents to shoot 25.4% from three-point range at home, 36.4% in a road/switch corner environment. I think they should be getting a boost at home. I do think that home three-point shooting number is a little bit of fool's gold, though, and I do think that that's going to be coming down, just like I do think we're going to see regression with Samford shooting 40.7% from three-point range as a collective. I think both see a little bit of regression here, and I think we find our watermark anchor for the Samford team. He's been able to give you 17 points, 6 rebounds per game, and it's just a really unique Samford team in general in that they just push tempo. They're a team that they're going to be willing to put you on the free throw line, but they themselves are going to find a way to get to the charity stripe as well. And they've got a point guard in Rylan Jones that began his career at Utah. His assist-to-turnover ratio is darn near 3, so he's actually done a solid job there. It is a Samford team that still turning the ball over right around 14 times per contest, but they do get an offensive rebound on darn near 30% of their misses as well. That is a top 95 mark in all of college basketball. This is a Furman team that, by contrast, they're getting an offensive rebound on about 28.5% of their misses. They're about 133rd. So you should get a lot of opportunities here for the Samford team going up against a Furman bunch that they just haven't necessarily found that point guard. And this is a Samford team that they're one of the best in all of college basketball at generating turnovers. They're getting 11.4 turnovers per contest. If you include the injured Jermaine Marshall, their top 5 scorers all generate at least 1 steal per contest. And with this Furman team, you have to fear that ball security is just going to be really bad, and that's going to turn defense into offense for Samford. Now, for Furman, they do get back Marcus Foster, top scorer with 19 points, 6.5 boards, but it is also a Furman team that they only shoot about 32% from three-point range. That's a little bit of an issue when you do have a Samford team that is pretty much a heat-seeking missile with regards to trying to generate turnovers, and they do leave themselves a little bit vulnerable from beyond the arc. Samford 238th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Carter Witt has not necessarily developed the way that the team was hoping that he would coming in from Wake Forest. 4 assists to 2.5 turnovers, shooting less than 30% from three-point range. So I do like JP Biggs, 5 assists, 17 points per contest. I do think that you get another harebrained Samford game. Samford, ever since that loss to Purdue to begin the season, and for that matter, also the loss to VCU. Those were 2 less than sightly games to say the least, but ever since then for the Samford team, they have gone to at least 75 points in every single one of their games, while they themselves are certainly giving it up. The last team to be out below 70 points, that would be the Citadel in very early January. They have allowed one opponent to not exceed 70 points out of their last 6 games, so it certainly is, in my opinion, going to be an up-and-down, crazy game, and you've got a Furman team that they themselves have gone to at least 82 points in 3 out of their last 4 games, so I think that Samford is just built for this a little bit more, with them being able to generate the turnovers. I do think that they get the job done in this spot. Sit Samford as a 2-point favorite, looking at them outright on the money line, and I set my total at 172, so we're also looking over 677, 678 on the betting board. Mercer hits the road. They're facing off against the Citadel. The Citadel is a 2.5-point favorite. Your total is 133. This is a total I did set at 135. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. The Citadel is a bottom 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, which is wild to say because under Duggar Bockham, back in the day, this was a team that was absolutely gunning it for all mankind. But for the Citadel, I do think that they should be able to win the battle on the glass, which will allow them to win the game, as you do have Quentin Belora Brown, who's done a nice job down low. 10.5 points, 9.2 rebounds per game. Not a guy that's going to, by any stretch of imagination, light it up from three-point range, but it's done a solid job of helping the Citadel become a little bit more of a slow and controlled team and be a team that ranks in the top 85 nationally with regards to rebound rate. They go up against a Mercer team that's more around 200th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, as Jalen McCreary is having to do a little bit of everything. 6'8" combo player that gives you 14.5 points, 4.8 boards, a block, a steal per contest. Really doesn't pop threes, though. It's a Mercer team that as a whole, from distance, they've had their struggles, shooting about 33.9% from three-point range. I like what I've been seeing out of the duo of Robbie Carpety along Jake Davis. Both of these guys do shoot north of 39%. 33% from three-point range with a combined about 18.5 points per contest, but you don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, and you really don't have a lot of facilitation either. Your main man is Anthony Bernard, who's been able to give you about 3 points, 2.5 assists per contest. He just is a little bit more of a scoring threat at the point guard spot, and for the Citadel, they've got a big two out there in the backcourt. A.J. Smith along with Elijah Morgan will be able to combine for 30.5 points per contest. Morgan shoots 43.5% from distance, Smith more around 36% from the outside, and also for the Citadel, even though they only shoot 72% as a collective at the free throw line, each of your top 3 scorers are shooting at least 80% at the free throw line. I think that could really come into play in a little bit more of a nip and tuck game, and the Citadel, they've been able to do a solid job holding on to the ball. It's a Mercer team that has been scuffling with regards to their offense. It's really been an up and down offense as they have scored in their last 5 games 86, 73, 52, 60, and 80 points. That's been very random to say the least. Meanwhile, it is a Citadel team that they've scored 71 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, but they've gotten to at least 67 in 3 out of their last 4, and I think that you're going to see much of that here. Our first of 70 game wins, but I think both teams get right around that 65, 66 mark, which is why I did set my total at a 135. I'm going to be taking a look at the over in this spot, and did make my line 3, so want to lay 2.5 with the Citadel. 679, 680 on the betting board. Bradley plays us Murray State. Murray State does find themselves as an underdog of 9.5 points. Your total on this game is 140, and with Murray State, I did set them as an underdog of 8.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take these points. It is a Bradley team that certainly has been able to heat up. They got off to a less than amazing start to the season, but ever since then, this team has just been pounding teams into oblivion. This was a Bradley bunch I was really lacking on defense to start the season. Those issues have been put to rest. They have now given up fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. The lone exception is they gave up 72 points to a Belmont team that's very up-tempo and a team that gave up north of 90 points in the process. Past that, Bradley has allowed fewer than 70 points in every one of their other last 7 games. Meanwhile, it's a Murray State team that they've been a little bit stagnant with regards to their offense recently. 73 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. Defense is starting to come back for them, though. They've now given up 72 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, which is incredibly difficult when Indiana State is on the schedule. Rob Berry, Jacoby Wood, both of these guys give you about 12.5 points per contest for a Murray State team that they do a nice job holding on to the ball. 9.4 turnovers per game. That's one of the best turnover ratios in all of college basketball. That said, they're only shooting about 33% from 3-point range, and Murray State is certainly getting gash from beyond the arc. 319th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, though strangely, they're allowing opponents to shoot 39.5% from 3-point range at home, just 33.3% in a road/switch court environment. Now, where I think they go wrong is going up against both Levy Leon's, a 6'9" combo player for this Bradley team that's giving you 13 points, 7+ rebounds per game, other than Nick Ellingson, who is able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game for this Murray State team. You really don't have a lot of size down low. Murray State overall, in terms of their rebound rate, they're currently clocking in about 200th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this Bradley team has been able to ascend on the boards. They're now about 135th in all of college basketball, and you do have Connor Hickman, who was a little bit banged up towards the beginning part of the season, doing a nice job up and out this offense with 15 points, 3 assists on 42.5% 3-point shooting, and this has been a Bradley team that has been able to elevate their outside shooting now 38% from 3-point range. Duke Dean being able to give you about 4 assists to about 1.6 turnovers per game is big as well. Bradley still committing about 12.5 turnovers per game, but they've been able to clean that up in this recent win streak, and recently Bradley has been able to put up some points. How about 77 plus in 4 of their last 5 games? So as Murray State is starting to improve defensively, Bradley is starting to improve offensively, so good old situation of something's got to give. I did set my total at a 140.5. Even though Murray State is a bottom 50 team in terms of total possessions per game, they do leave themselves very prone to giving it up from the outside, so I'm going to be taking a look at the over, but I do think that Murray State holds in there. I do think that their guard play and their ability to hang on to the ball, not turn it over, is going to allow them to be able to hold in this game. So I did set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Murray State and going to be taking a look at the 140 or less. Over 681, 682 on the betting board. Georgia State, its road face-off against Marshall. Marshall is a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite, and your total is 155 with Marshall. I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points, so here at the 3, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Georgia State. It is a Marshall team that has been able to do a relatively solid job on the glass. The problem for them is that they just have not had any consistency from 3-point range. You've got Obiana Onchile Killian, who's been a 6'8" do-it-all player with about 16.5 points, 6.5 boards, shooting 38% from 3-point range, but that's really their main outside presence. It's a Marshall team that shoots 30.5% from 3-point range. That is a bottom 50 mark in all of college basketball. And for this Marshall team, they're about 189th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but at home they allow opponents to shoot 35% from three, more around 32.8% in a road/shoot-your-corner environment. Going up against a Georgia State team that I'm not going to say that they go bombs away from three-point range, but they should be able to win the battle on the perimeter. They're a top 75 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I love the way that DeJuan Odom is able to dole out the ball and be a little bit of a do-it-all sort of player for Georgia State. 11 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists, only shooting about 28.5% from three. That's never really been his game, but he's done this all while committing only about 1.6 turnovers per game, and he's got a grand total of 6 turnovers in the team's last 5 contests. So he's been able to keep it clean there, get the ball into the hands of someone like a Lucas Taylor, who's giving you 15 points, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point. Georgia State overall, they only shoot about 32% from three, but they also only turn the ball over about 10 times per contest. They've got one main rebounder in Jaden Turner down for what? He's been able to give you about 9.3 rebounds per game since coming in from Queens NC, and this is a Marshall team that has Nate Martin down low, comes in from Texas State. He's been able to supply the team with 9 rebounds per game. Marshall about 160th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and it's a Georgia State team that they still are leaving a little bit of something to be desired on this front, but they're about 156th. These two teams are very even up with that regard. It is a Georgia State team that's a little bit more efficient with their offense, so you do have a Georgia State team that really doesn't take it away either, which should be able to help out Marshall in this spot, and I do think that Marshall just benefits from being at home. It's hard to be able to get to the state of West Virginia, so it is a circumstance where I did set my line at a 2.5 here at the 3. Going to be willing to take the points with Georgia State, but staying away from the money line, and did set my total 154.5. It's a Marshall team that does rank at the top 50 with regards to total possessions per game, but they haven't necessarily been efficient with regards to their offense. Meanwhile, they've been able to do a solid job cleaning up the glass. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to take 3+ here with Georgia State. 683, 684 on the betting board. Western Carolina is going to be playing against UNC Greensboro, and Greensboro does find themselves as 2.5-point underdogs. Your total between 134 and 135.5 with Greensboro. I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Western Carolina. With this UNC Greensboro team, they're just not the same team defensively this year that they have been in past years. So I will say it does feel like they're starting to round into a little bit of better form for this Greensboro team. They've now given up 67 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games, and they've been able to hold to 70 points or fewer in 5 out of their last 6. So that's a good mark for a UNC Greensboro team that typically under Mike Jones, you ask who, and I say Coach Mike Jones is one of the better defensive teams that you're going to find in mid-major college basketball. Currently, Greensboro clocking in 149th in the country, turns points allowed on a per possession basis, but this is a Western Carolina team that is a top 100 team, turns points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, I will say this about Western Carolina. They're giving up 3.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-shoot-your-corner environment, and they do have to go up against Mikael Brown-Jones. He has been one of the best mid-major players in college basketball. Currently shooting 62% from three-point range, 20 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous what he's doing. I'm sorry, but there has to be some regression to the 62% three-point shooting. In the last 3 years, he shot below 30% from three-point range. I think that this has just gone a little bit too far, but you also do have the Langley brothers for this UNC Greensboro team. With Kobe Langley, he does a good job of being able to dish out the ball. 6 assists, 2.5 steals, 9.5 points at 38% three-point shooting. And Keyshawn Langley, more of your score, 3.5 assists, steal and a half, 13.5 points on about 37% three-point shooting. And as a team, Greensboro is shooting north of 39% from distance, and does go up against a Western Carolina team that is 244th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but a good elixir to that, having Vontavious Woolbright doing all that he's doing. He is a double-double machine for this Western Carolina team with 12.5 rebounds, 21.1 points, 5.3 assists per contest, and he's got some nice help around him. Someone like a Trey Jackson has been able to give you 13 points. He shoots about 35% from the outside. While it is a Greensboro team that they have been able to do a relatively okay job guarding the three-point arc, 93rd in all of college basketball with that regard, you do have someone like a Russell Jones shooting 40% from three-point range with about 11.5 points per contest. It's a Western Carolina team that has been able to take care of the ball with about 10.5 turnovers per game. And for Western Carolina, this defense has given up 66 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. So they've been incredibly impressive with that regard. I do think that this is going to be a game in which Western Carolina going to be able to find ways to be able to score on this UNC Greensboro team. Both teams are tapering off a little bit with regards to their tempo, but I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be close enough for late game felling. I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to knock down some shots as well. So I did set my total at a 135.5. Here at 134, 135, I'm going to be taking a look at the over. And with Western Carolina, I do think that the best player out there on the floor, Woolbright, is going to be able to lead this team to victory. I think that Western Carolina wins this game on the glass. So going to be willing to lay it with Western Carolina, made them a 3.5 point favorite, and at 135 or less, looking at the over. 685, 686 on the betting board. The men of Troy play host to Texas State. Texas State just find themselves as a 7 to a 7.5 point underdog with your total 140. With Texas State, I did set them as an underdog of 8 points. So here at a 7 to 7.5, going to be one to lay with the Troy team has covered pretty much 75% of their spreads as far as this season. They have been an incredibly impressive team in that regard. And it's a Troy bunch that has a great backcourt, led by two guys in Christian Eugene, along with Seton Connerway. These two guys combining for about 27 points per game, both shooting north of 40% from three-point range. Now, there's a bunch that is turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest, but going up against a Texas State team that doesn't do a great job of being able to generate turnovers, and Texas State just has not been the same team defensively this year that they have been in past years. Now, the one thing that Texas State does do is they do take away the three ball. In a roadside shoot court environment, they are allowing opponents to shoot just 28.5% from three-point range. Overall this season, they are 51st in all of college basketball in a roadside shoot court environment. That's a top 25 mark, but this is a Troy team that they themselves have been able to do a relatively solid job with regards to guarding things down low, and at home, they're a much better three-point shooting defense than they have been away from home. Away from home, opponents are shooting 38.9% from the outside, more like 32.5% from three-point range when they are at home. It is a Texas State team that, despite the fact that they've done a good job of being able to lock you down from three-point range, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are still 200th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is a Troy team that's more around 104th, giving it 10 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. And a lot of it is because this is a Troy team that's just been able to rebound by committee. For Texas State, they're right around about 150th with regards to rebound rate. Troy, they're more around 91st. And when it comes to Texas State, they just have not been able to have a lot of consistency out there in the backcourt. You've got Colton Benson, who is now eligible after he began his career over at Army. He's been back in the fold for about 9 games, 9 points per contest on 47.5% three-point shooting, but still a team that turns the ball over 13.5 times per contest. They're still really lacking quite a bit down low with the Tyrell Morgan injury. So Brandon Love has had to do a little bit of everything. 11.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. That has been relatively rough for a squad that they were really looking to build themselves up down low. And this has been a Troy team that all season long has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to take the ball away. This isn't one of these teams that's going to be playing like an amoeba zone or anything like that, but Troy, 48th in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis when they're at home. They elevate into the top 35 with this regard, and I do think the Texas State going to have a tough time dealing with that. I did, as a result, set my total at 140. It's a Texas State team that plays slow, but they don't take care of the ball. I was seeing some 140.5 and 141s out there, and if we can get that, we'll be looking under, and with Troy, willing to lay up to 7.5 with them. 687, 688 on the betting board. Davidson, it's a road. They're facing up against St. Louis. St. Louis is a favorite of a point to a 1.5, and your total on this game going to be getting it at 147 to 147.5. Davidson is a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. Out of 362 teams, they are 359th, and this is a St. Louis team that they themselves have not been playing at warp speed. 234th in all of college basketball. Now, both of these defenses, well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I just don't know if you get enough possessions to be able to get an over in this game. I did set my total at 144.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Now, Davidson can very easily get gash from beyond the arc. Davidson, about 157th in the country with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that leaps up to 36% in a roadside shoot court environment, and this has been a Davidson team that, in general, they just have not played the same when they've been away from home. Davidson, 263rd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. To their credit, they're actually giving up fewer points per possession in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they're at home, but where they really see the drop-off is in regards to their offensive production. They're averaging 15.1 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, and this has been a St. Louis team that has been a bit of a rudderless mess all season long with their offense. They're about 192nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they now have Sincere Parker back in the fold. guy that was really rolling before he got injured in that tournament out there in the great state of South Carolina towards the beginning part of the season. He should be able to register for the team double figures moving forward. On top of that, you do have a St. Louis team that has Gibson Jimerson, who's able to do a nice job, giving you about 16 points per contest, shooting once again from three-point range, about 38.5% for a team that all in all, they shoot 37.4% from the outside. It is a St. Louis team that sort of mixes some matches down low. Now you've got Bradley Aziro. He comes in from Georgetown. He's been able to give the team 7 rebounds per game. That was something that they were very much lacking. And this is a Davidson team that they're really looking to rebound by committee. Davidson, it's about 186th in the country with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that Grant Huffman, right now, their leader of rebounds with about 5.1 per contest. So does a little bit of everything. 13 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from 3, but David Skogman, he gives you about 5 boards, 13.5 points on 46% three-point shooting as a 6'10", do-it-all sort of player. And that's pretty much everyone on this Davidson team. Like, everyone in the starting rotation gives you about 10 points, 4.5 or so rebounds per game. Really everyone except for Reed Bailey shoots it well from three-point range. So I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see how these two teams match up with one another. It's a Davidson team that's been a little bit better in terms of their defense, giving up fewer than 70 points in each of their last 2 games. And if you're looking in regulation and regulation only, it doesn't sound like much, but they've now given up 75 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it's a St. Louis team that has been falling on some tough times with their offense. 67 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. Good old situation of something's got to give. Davidson just not the same offensive team when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot-your-corner environment. This has been a St. Louis team that's had their issues being able to guard the 3 ball all season long, but I do think that they get a nice boost being at home, allowing opponents to shoot just 30.3% from 3-point range at home compared to 38.1% away from home. So I did set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with St. Louis, and with this total, set it at a 144.5. So going under and going to be looking to lay the small number here with St. Louis. 689, 690 on the betting board. Tempo, we give our Old Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. Say play us to South Florida. South Florida is a favorite of between 2 to 2.5 points. Total on this game between 143 and 143.5. Set Temple as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line. It's a South Florida team that has been a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Top 60 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but this has been a Temple squad that just has not relied a lot on the 3 ball because they just haven't had a lot of guys that have been able to hit these threes. Micah Piccarelli is shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. He's been able to give you about 9 or so points per contest, but really past that, you've got a lot of guys that are looking to knife the ball down low, and I do think that that's going to be playing in advantage of a Temple Owls team that gets to go up against the South Florida bunch. They've got one guy that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. That'd be Kassan Pryor, who's been solid. He's been able to give you about 7 boards. He's chipping in there about 12.5 points per game, and certainly for South Florida, they should find some prosperity from the outside. I still do believe that South Florida is going to continue to ascend with their 3-point shooting percentage. They're shooting 32.6% overall from the outside. This is a team that's made up of a lot of guys that were on Kennesaw State last season and followed their coach in Amir Abdul-Rahim. Someone like a Chris Youngblood, shooting 33.5% from distance, was shooting 40% from 3 a season ago. I do think that they're going to be able to elevate a little bit, but this is also a bunch in South Florida that they just don't have a lot down low, and while you're struggling from 3-point range, that's a bit of an issue. Now, it is a Temple team that allows opponents to shoot 36.3% from 3-point range at home. That is well outside the top 250 nationally in terms of home 3-point shooting percentage, but Heiser Beller probably going to be the most versatile player out there on the floor. 16 points, 4.5 assists, a steal and a half, 4 boards per contest. Really love what he's been able to bring to the table. You've got someone like a Julio White who's been in and out of the fold, but when he's been out there, he's been able to grab boards. And this is a Temple team that has 5 different guys that do give you at least 4 rebounds per game. Steve Settle has a little bit of versatility, has not really popped a lot of threes, but he is capable of being able to stretch out a defense. It's a Temple team that, with regards to their rebound rate, they're just 264th in all of college basketball, but they have been quite a bit better when they've been at home. And this is a South Florida team that they themselves are right around about 225th with regards to rebound rate. So you've got warts on both sides, but you do have a Temple team that's only turned the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. Legitimately have been some victims of some bad shot variance, and the defense has been better for the Temple team, giving up 73 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. To the credit of South Florida, they've been able to hold up, giving up 75 or fewer in each of their last 5 games. That does include a win the first time around when they played against Temple by a kind of 76-68, a game in which Temple shot just 7 of 27 from 3-point range, but Temple was able to do a relatively solid solid job of playing even up on the offensive glass. Steve Seton was able to have 9 rebounds in this game, and he was also able to generate 4 steals. And I do think that the overall versatility, coupled with Temple getting some bad shooting variance the first time around, that should correct itself the second time, I think leads to Temple getting some revenge. So I'm going to be taking a look at Temple outright on the money line, set them as 1.5 point favorite, and did set my total at a 145.5. Both of these teams are relatively mid-tempo. We saw it the first time around with this game being able to hit about a 145. That was a 76-68 final, so 144 to be exact. I think we're just a little bit too low, and that was with Temple being ice cold from 3-point range. So looking at the over and looking at Temple outright on the money line. 691, 692 on the betting board. Fordham, it's the road face-off against Rhode Island. Rhode Island does find themselves as a favorite of 2 to 2.5 points. Total this game is anywhere between 149.5 and 151, and I did set Rhode Island as a favorite of 3 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It is a Rhode Island squad that has really gotten a lot of production out of David Green. He was the fold for the first 10 plus games of the season, and without him, Rhode Island was not really getting a lot going on offense, but he's been able to give the team north of 14 points per contest. Does a relatively solid job down low of giving you some rebounding, someplace where Rhode Island has had their issues. David Futures has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest, but past that, nobody else really giving you north of 4.2 boards per game. So having Green be able to chip in there about 5 boards on 44% three-point shooting has been massive for a Rhode Island team that all in all, they are shooting about 35.5% from 3. If you do have trepidation with this number, they do turn the ball over 13 times per contest as a team that has been lower tempo overall for the season, but that has not been the case recently. For this Rhode Island team, they have all of a sudden been able to explode with their offense. Ever since Green has come into the fold, this team has been able to reach the 72-point plateau in all but 2 of their games. Meanwhile, it's a Fordham team that they certainly have been having a little bit of a rough go of it with regards to both their offense and their defense. Offensively, this team has now given up 74 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, held below 70 points in each of their last 2. That triple overtime game against George Washington certainly did throw off their metrics, and for Fordham, it's just all about finding some facilitation. You've got a pair of guys in your soft Metter along with Antrell Charlton that will combine for about 6 rebounds per game, and Charlton does have some good versatility. Only gives you about 6.5 points per contest, but does throw in there some rebounds. He's able to give you a little bit on the defensive side of things in terms of generating a steal per game as well. And then you've also got Abdul Simbilia. He's not necessarily a supreme scorer down low, but he's been able to give the team a little bit north of 8 rebounds per game. And I do think that Fordham is going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to control things down low. This is a Rhode Island bunch that they are 83rd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate, but this has been a Fordham team that they've been able to be consistent with regards to rebounding. They're only about 133rd with regards to the rebound rate, but the rebound rate is actually a little bit better in a road/neutral court environment rather than when they are at home. The big thing for Fordham is taking care of the ball. They have been turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest, but they also wrestle it away. They're generating 8.5 steals per contest, while Rhode Island just less than 5. But with Green in the fold, this has been a different Rhode Island team, which is why I did set them as a favorite of 3 points in this spot. So seeing what we're getting in terms of 2.5, it's a max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. You've got a Fordham team that is still in the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, playing a little bit more up-tempo, but we have also been seeing this Rhode Island team be one that has been quite a bit more slow this season as well. So I do think that the defense wins out here. Set my total 145, looking at the under, and with Rhode Island, willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 693, 694 on the betting board. Iowa plays us in Maryland. Maryland does find themselves as 5 to 5.5 point underdogs with your total 150.5 to 151.5. With Maryland, I did set them as underdogs of 7 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Iowa. This is an Iowa team that just is so different at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. You're able to date this back the last 2 years. Last 2 years, Iowa has been generating north of 19.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. Iowa always does a good job of being able to take care of the ball as well. About 9.9 turnovers per game, despite the fact that they're a top 75 team with regards to tempo and possessions per game with Ben Krikke. Crikey, this guy has been good, shooting about 41.5% from 3, 16.5 points, 5 boards per contest, and Iowa, for all the deficiencies that they've got on the defensive side of things and really anything that doesn't involve offense, they do have each of their top 4 scorers, giving at least 4.2 rebounds per game. You've been able to have Peyton Samford along with Tony Perkins combined for about 7 assists to 2.8 turnovers per game, so they've been efficient there. And this is a Maryland team that the lifeblood of this team is getting second chances and being able to generate turnovers. It is a Maryland bunch that does rank in the top 35 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and it's really interesting to look at this Maryland team because they do a good job of not allowing a lot of made threes. In terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from three-point range, are a top 35 team in the country at running you off the three-point line, but they're allowing opponents to shoot 33.8% from three-point range, which ranks 187th, but that drops to 29% when they're away from home. So We've got a lot of different funky bunch split when it comes to this Maryland team. One thing that is not funky, one thing that is very easy to take a look at, is that this team has been stinking it up with regards to their own three-point shooting. 341st in all of college basketball, shooting 25.6% from three-point range. Now, this is an Iowa team that, if they've actually done one thing okay, they're about 116th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that goes to about 35% at home in a road/neutral environment. That drops to 29%. Maryland has to take on a Iowa team that has scored at least 75 points, by the way, in 30 out of their last 31 home games. That long streak came to an end in their game over the weekend against Purdue, but you take a look at what Jameer Young has been able to do. He's been a nice facilitator and do-it-all player for Maryland. 20.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, steal and apper contest. He's really the lone guy other than Dante Scott on the roster that shoots above 31% from three-point range at about 33.7% from the outside. It is a Maryland team that has been turning the ball over about 12 times per contest, and you just use a little bit more out of some of these guys like a Dante Scott, who's giving you 11 points, 4.5 boards. Deshaun Harris-Smith, it's been a bit of a disappointment, but Julian Reese is able to give you 10 rebounds per game. But with Iowa, just a completely different team at Carver Hawkeye Arena. They took a little bit of an L against Purdue a few nights ago, and this has been a team getting gashed on defense, giving up 76 plus points each of their last 5 games. It's a Maryland team that has been quite good with their defense, 72 points or fewer surrendered in each of their last 5 games. So it's a situation of something's got to give. It always feels like you get a bit more scoring and tempo when things are out there in Iowa City. So I did set my total at 151. Here at a 150.5, I'd rather have that over rather than 151.5 under, just because Iowa just always seems to hit the over at home. So I default to that 150.5 over. And with Iowa, set them as 7-point favorites. I'm willing to lay 4.5 to 5 with them. 695, 696 on the betting board. Chattanooga is going to be in the road face-off against Wofford. And Wofford, a 1.5 to a 2-point home underdog. Your total on this game in between 150.5 and 151. I did set my total of 148.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. It's a Wofford team that overall for the season is well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but it's not like they've been a super duper up-tempo team. They're about 160th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they have seen a complete and utter stoppage with regards to their tempo. Over their last 3 games, they're playing at a rate of more than 10 possessions per game fewer than they were at the beginning part of the season. So this is a team that's really looking to slow down, and they take on a Chattanooga team has been pretty darn efficient with regards to their offense. Chattanooga, as always, they are outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You just come to expect that with Dan Earl teams, but Trey Bottom coming back into the fold is very big. He was one of those 2-time transfers that was denied a waiver to begin the season. He played with Earl over at VMI along with Hunter Ruffin. These 2 guys combining for 33.5 points, right around about 6 assists, 3.5 steals per game, and Bottom is right now shooting north of 50% from 3-point range. That should be coming down a little bit, but they do get to face off against a Wofford team that has been getting gashed from 3-point land all season long. For Wofford, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 328th, and when they're at home, this leaps up to about 37.3%. Now, it's not like this is a Chattanooga team that's doing anything amazing with regards to guarding the 3-point arc themselves. They're about 165th in the country. That goes to 34.7% in a roadside shooting court environment, but I do think that they should take it to a Wofford team that is going to have a little bit of a size advantage down low. Kyler Fiolowicz, he's been able to do a solid job being able to give you about 9 or so rebounds per game, and then Corey Tripp is a little bit of a do-it-all guy. He's been leading the way with 16 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, but does only shoot about 29% from 3-point range. Chattanooga, in terms of their rebound rate, about 168th in all of college basketball. It's a Wofford team that they've been able to grab a few second chances at about 131st with regards to their rebound rate, but I do think that Sam Alexis is going to be able to do his job down low. 11.5 points, 9.5 boards, someone who's been able to give you at least 7 boards in now 4 of the team's last 5 games, and has had 11 blocks in the team's last 5 games as well. I think he's going to be able to hold up down low, and in a game that I think is going to be slowed down once again, and it's a Chattanooga team that they themselves have given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that this Mocs team going to be able to get the job done against Wofford. I did set my line at a 2.5. Willing to lay the deuce here with Chattanooga, and going to be taking a look at the under with the way that both of these teams have really been slowing down their tempo. Set my total at a 146.5. 697, 698 on the betting board. Old Dominion is going to be playing us to James Madison. James Madison, an 8-point road favor. Your totals between 152.5 and 153.5. I set my line at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is an Old Dominion team that had a nice triumph about a week or so ago when they were able to take down Marshall, but That's not a Marshall team that's any good this year, and this is a James Madison team that's cutting through teams like a hot knife through butter. Recognize that they have lost 2 out of their last 5 games, but this is still a James Madison team that ranks in the top 50 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got so many different weapons for this team. You've got a team that's able to go right around about 7 to 8 deep with regards to rotation, with 8 different guys giving you at least 6.2 points per contest. TJ Bickerstaff, one of the best pure post presence in this conference, 14 points, 9 boards, gives you a little bit over his steal per contest. This team just has balanced shooting in general as well. Their only shooting is collective, about 33.8% from distance, yet they've been able to maintain offensively, and they get to go against an Old Dominion team that's outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Old Dominion just has not been able to guard the three-point arc to save their lives, 309th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I will say this, Old Dominion does have a top-flight duo that's able to put the ball in the basket, as you've been able to have Chauncey Jenkins along with Vashon Alouette be able to combine for about 33.5 points per contest. Alouette has been able to shoot about 36% from three-point range, and when it comes to this Old Dominion team, out of their top 6 scorers, 4 of them do shoot at least 36% from the outside, but they also shoot 66% at the free throw line. They take care of the ball with about 10.5 turnovers per game, and if you look at them in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they're actually an above average team with that regard. That said, they now have to go up against a James Madison team that has been one of the better ones at being able to generate turnovers as well, and you've got just so much versatility out there in the backcourt for this team as well. You've been able to have a lot out of Terrence Edwards, who's been able to give you 15 plus points per contest. Noah Friedel is able to give you like 5 boards, double figure amount of points per game. It's a James Madison team that has been one of the best at being able to travel all season long as well, and you've got a little bit of a tempo war as well, with James Madison really looking to push tempo, and Old Dominion, they actually are quite a bit faster this year than they have been in past years. Typically, you're used to seeing Old Dominion like 300th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They're just outside the top 100 right now, and it feels like it's not really by choice. Old Dominion, typically they're looking to slow things down. They've just been sped up, and they've been playing too fast for their own good. I do think that you're going to see a lot of that happen in this game as well. I think that James Madison just takes it to an Old Dominion team, as right now rudderless is just out of sorts. I set my line at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with James Madison. Set my total 155.5. Think that this is a nice spot for James Madison to be able to get past 80, so going to be taking a look at the over, and with James Madison, going to be willing to lay the number, made them an 11.5 point favorite. 699, 700 on the betting board. Richmond is playing against George Washington. Our nation's first president is an underdog of 8.5 to 9 points. So on this game is anywhere between 145 and 145.5. We haven't seen George Washington as this big of an underdog since Trenton, and I did set him as an 8.5 point underdog. Seeing the 9 out there, and this opened up at a 9.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with George Washington. It is a George Washington bunch, and no doubt about it, it's been a little bit rough for them in terms of just finding consistency from the bench, but this is a really good starting 5. You've got 4 separate guys that give you at least 12.9 points per contest, and outside of that, you've got one other guy in Babatunde Akingbola, who comes over from the SEC's, man, but give you about 5 boards, 3.3 blocks per contest, has been a really good rim protector. Top end talent, it is there. James Bishop, 4.5 assists, 38% three-point shooter, 18 points per contest, and then got a trio of guys. Maximus Edwards, Darren Buchanan, throw in there as well Garrett Johnson, who have all been able to give you at least 12.9 points per contest. Between this trio, you're able to get about 20 rebounds per game. Johnson shoots 44.5% from the outside. Edwards shoots 38.5% from three-point range. And among your top 7 scorers for this team, all but one of them are able to shoot at least 80% at the free throw line. So these guys have been very impressive with that regard. You've got a Richmond team that they do such a nice job taking care of the ball and not getting out of sorts. Richmond in the top 5 in all of college basketball. A fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot 36% from three-point range, with 3 other top 4 scorers shooting at least 38% from the outside. DeJee Bailey has been able to come in, give you about 9.5 points, 2.5 assists, 2 steals, 4 boards. You got Neil Quinn, the true 7-footer, with about 3.5 assists, 1.3 blocks, 13 points per contest. And the King, Jordan King, shoots 41% from 3 with about 18.5 points per contest. But it's really going to come down to which of these teams is able to get after it defensively for 1, and 2, which of these teams is able to guard the arc. George Washington, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 55th in all of college basketball, but that does balloon to 36% in a road/neutral court environment. Meanwhile, this is a Richmond team that they're clocking in 22nd in all of college basketball, but I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression with that regard. I do think that George Washington going to do a good job of moving the ball. It is a George Washington team that they get a little bit out of sorts with regards regards to taking care of the ball. Richmond, they're okay at generating turnovers. They're not great. They're not terrible, but I do think that this George Washington team going to be able to do a relatively solid job on the glass. If there is one kryptonite with this Richmond team, it's that even though they do have Neil Quinn along with Isaac Bigelow, they're not a team that's necessarily too amazing with regards to their rebound rate. They're about 272nd in all of college basketball. George Washington clocking in more on 170th, and this has been a George Washington team that legitimately has been pretty solid on defense. 65th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so they are giving up north of 20 points more per 100 possessions in a road/shoot record environment. This is a circumstance where I set my total 144.5. I do think that things get slowed down. I do think that both of these teams have a little bit of a rough go of it from 3-point range, so diving under and at 9+, going to be willing to take the points with George Washington. 7-1, 7-2 on the betting board. Coastal Carolina plays those two at Southern Miss. Southern Miss does find themselves as 3 to 3.5 point favorites, and your total, it is 147. I did set Southern Miss as a 2.5 point underdog. I'm looking at Coastal Carolina outright on the money line. It's a Southern Miss team that just all season long, it feels like they've been a total mess. Now they've got Andre Curbelo dealing with a back issue, and Southern Miss just completely giving it up from 3-point range. 342nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And it's a Coastal Carolina team that strangely has had some of their best results in a roadside-shoot record environment, despite the fact that most of their games have come at home. Coastal Carolina is actually, as a matter of fact, giving up about 5.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when away from home rather than when they are at home. But both of these teams have been a relative wreck on defense. Both of these teams outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Southern Miss, they are giving up 11.5 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot record environment. When it comes to Southern Miss, they're going to be really having to rely upon the duo of Donovan Ivory along with Austin Crawley to be able to get things going on offense. Crawley has been able to give you about 15.5 points, shoots in the low 30s from 3-point range, while Ivory, he's more of your 3-point shooter, 38% from the outside. Down low, you've been able to get a little bit of shot blocking and about 6.5 rebounds per game out of Victor Hard, who's been able to give you about 13.5 points per contest. And then the UNLV transfer, Victor Iwakur, has been able to give you a little bit over 2 blocks, 7.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. So these guys have been able to do a relatively okay job, and they're going up against a Coastal Carolina team that on the glass they're not too bad. Gianna Ojiako has been able to give you about 10.5 rebounds per game. It's a Coastal Carolina team that in terms of overall rebound rate, they're about 153rd in all of college basketball, and for Southern Miss just 236th. No, I will say Coastal Carolina doesn't have quite the shot blocking that you're going to see on the flip side, but they've been able to get a little bit more recently out of Jacob Myers, who's been able to chip in there about 13 points, shooting 41.5% from the outside. Now, if you've got trepidation with Coastal Carolina pulling this game out, they turn the ball over 13.5 times per contest, and they shoot 63% at the free throw line. That is very much less than savory. That said, this is a Southern Miss team that ever since we have seen the injury to Andre Curbelo, they have failed to break the 70-point plateau in any of their last 3 games, though the defense has been better. 71 points of fear surrender in 4 of their last 5 games. This is a Coastal Carolina team that has scored 70 or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games, so good old situation of something's got to give. I did set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be looking at Coastal outright on the money line, and I did set my total at 148.5. Both of these teams have really struggled defensively. Both of these teams don't guard the arc very well, and I do think that both of these struggling offenses are able to erupt. So I'm going to be looking at the over and Coastal Carolina outright on the money line. 703, 704 on the betting board. Miami, it's Red face off against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame does find themselves as a 4 to 4.5 point underdog. Your total between 138 and 139. With Notre Dame, I did set them as an underdog of 6 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Miami. This Miami team does one thing very well on defense, and that's generate turnovers. I will say, actually, 2 things very well, because they also do a nice job of being able to guard the 3-point arc, but they get to go up against a Notre Dame team that's outside the top 300 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. So that should be about a number that for Miami is currently 21st in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. But for Notre Dame, they've been able to do a solid job defensively as well. They're a top 100 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. They've been able to get a lot going with regards to the defensive side of things, as they've been trying to win games by just making them ugly, making them super low scoring, and it's been working to success for them. Notre Dame, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 66th in all of college basketball, going up against a Miami team that they've been a little bit better defensively this year than they have been in past years. They're a top 100 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so they are giving up 20 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home. But when it comes to this Notre Dame team, they just do have a tough time very much holding on to the ball, as Marcus Burton has been able to give you 15 points. He's able to supply you with 5+ rebounds per game, and while he does give out about 3.9 assists per contest, 4.1 turnovers per game, most of any player out there at the Power 5 level. Meanwhile, it's a Miami team that they themselves do turn the ball over 12.8 times per contest, but they generate about 8 steals per contest. Out of your top 5 scorers, 4 of them give you at least 1.2 steals per contest, and it's a Miami team that they do shoot as a collective 39.3% from 3-point range. Their top 6 scores. 5 of them shoot at least 36.5% from three-point range, including Wooga Poplar, continuing to shoot 46% from the outside, 15 points, 5 boards. He has been impressive. And then No Chad Omier should be able to own things down low, 17.2 points, right around 9.5 rebounds per game. You don't necessarily have ideal rebounding around him, but it's not like this is a Notre Dame team that's necessarily been batting down the hatches with having a lot of size themselves. Outside of Burton, you've got a lot of inconsistency when it comes to hitting the glass. It's a team that's right around about 78th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Miami more in that neighborhood, about 92nd, but you do have someone at Matthew Cleveland that gives you 5.5 boards, 15.5 points per game. And for Notre Dame, I do think that the turnovers going to mount against a Miami team that has been a little bit of a ball-hawking defense. I will say Micah Shrewsbury, along J.R. Kozenski, these two guys, they're combining for about 18 points per contest, both shooting about 33% from three. They've been some bright spots for a Miami team that is going to have to match up with a Notre Dame team that, by committee, not too shabby with regards to rebounding. You've got 4 separate guys that give you at least 4.8 rebounds per game, but nobody that really dominates things down low in the same way that No Chad Omier does. It's a Miami team that has been a little bit better defensively, giving up fewer than 72 points in regulation because the Wake Forest game, that went to overtime, and now 3 out of their last 5 games. So a little bit of an interesting circumstance here against a Notre Dame team that in regulation. This team has failed to break the 70-point plateau here in the entire month. The game that they scored 75 points against in Georgia Tech in overtime, that was a game that, well, it did go to overtime, so that's not regulation. And past that, this has been a pretty disastrous offensive team. So I did sell my total at 136. I think that you get a slow down slog in this game at a 138, 139.5. I'm looking at the under, but I do think the Miami gets the job done, willing to lay up to 5.5 with them. 7-5, 7-6 on the betting board. It is Virginia. They play us NC State, and NC State is an underdog of 4 to 4.5 points. Total on this game going to be finding that anywhere between a 130 and a 131, and I did sell my total at a 130. So this is a spot where I'm going to be taking a look at the under. It's a NC State team that was able to knock off Virginia the first time around, but this has been a Virginia team that has been giving up more than 17 points fewer per 100 possessions when they've been at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And they do go up against an NC State team that, while they do a nice job protecting the ball, top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, they're not an amazing shooting team. You've got DJ Turner up Orange shooting 42% from 3-point range, 15 points, 2.8 assists per contest, but really past that, don't have anyone else on the roster that plays consistently that shoots north of 35% from 3-point range. Casey Marcel, Jaden Taylor, they're both shooting less than 32% from 3 ball, combining for 24 points per contest. And for NC State, other than Mohamed Diarra, who's been able to give you 4.5 points, right around 6 rebounds per game, there's not a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. That really hides the kryptonite that you've got with this Virginia team, and that they just aren't a good rebounding team at all. Virginia, about 263rd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You've only got one guy in the roster, that would be Ryan Dunn. That's able to give you north of 3.5 rebounds per game, though he has been able to get her done. 9.5 points, 7 boards, 2 blocks, 2 steals per contest for Mr. Dunn. And then Reese Beekman chips in there 2.2 steals per game. This is a Virginia team that has been able to do a really good job of generating turnovers, top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And first time they played against NC State, they did a good job of being able to break that defense. Just 6 turnovers for them, and with NC State being able to play relatively even up on the glass, that was more than enough for them to be able to get the win at home. But I do have a feeling that with this game being in the great state of Virginia, I do think that that is going to be turning things around just a little bit. And I do think that Isaac McNeely is going to be able to get going in this game. First time around these two teams played, he had 18 points. And for McNeely, overall for the season, shoots 49% from 3 with 12 points per contest, shoots north of 51.7% from 3-point range at home. And now you're getting a little bit more out of Jordan Minor as well, a guy that's only been able to average about 4 points per contest this season, but 9+ points at each of the team's last 3 games, was a part of that Merrimack defense that was always good at being able to generate turnovers. He's been able to give a nice little spark with that. 6'8", nice combo player for this bunch. And I do think that with having a guy like a Reese Beekman that's able to give you north of 5 assists per contest, that Virginia's going to be able to get their revenge. It's an NC State team that's been getting gashed with regards to their defense ever since that game against Virginia. They've given up 76+ points in 3 of their 4 games, and the game in which they did not give up 76 plus, they were held to 54 points against North Carolina. Meanwhile, this Virginia defense has continued to be very consistent ever since that loss against NC State. 66 points or fewer allowed in every single game. So I do think that Virginia is going to get their revenge. Can only make this number 4, though, because I do think that with NC State, this is going to be a squad that is going to match up very well with Virginia. I don't think that they're going to have quite the same amount of turnovers as a lot of their foes. I do think that Virginia avenges their earlier loss. I don't think it's by margin, though. I set my number at 4. Going to be willing to take 4.5 plus here with NC State, and did set my total at 130. So looking at the under and looking at 4.5 or more with NC State. 707, 708 on the betting board. Middle Tennessee is going to be playing against Jacksonville State, and Jacksonville State is a 1-2 point road favorite. Your total is between 120.5 and 121. Set my total at a 124. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. This is not a game I think is going to be high scoring by any stretch of the imagination. You've got two teams that are well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, and a Middle Tennessee team that is a bottom 30 team nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For Middle Tennessee, if you look at D1 opponents and D1 opponents only, this team has scored now 65 points or fewer in each out of their last 8 games. I mean, my goodness. And the last time they were able to exceed the 70-point plateau, that required overtime. So if you're looking at regulation and regulation only, this Middle Tennessee team has scored 66 points or fewer in each of their last 11 games and have scored 68 points or fewer in every single one of their games since opening night against Division I teams. That's horrible. That said, you do have Jared Coleman-Jones, who's able to give you about 7 boards, 9 points per contest. It is a Middle Tennessee team that has been able to have Elias King out there in the backcourt give you something. He's giving you about 12 points per contest, shoots about 32% from 3, which doesn't sound great, but you're a team that's turned the ball over 14.5 times per contest with 65% free throw shooting and 27% three-point shooting. You gotta take whatever you can get, and with the Jacksonville State team, it's not like this team has been magical with regards to their offense, but Kai Tandy should be the best offensive player out there, so I did set Jacksonville State as 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Tandy, he has been really the leader for Jacksonville State. 19.5 points on about a steal per contest while shooting 40% per thing. In Jacksonville State, they do shoot about 33% from the outside. This is a Middle Tennessee team that typically they generate a lot of turnovers with injuries. They haven't done quite as much of that this season. And for Middle Tennessee at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 29.5% from three-point range, or 151st in all of college basketball overall with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Jacksonville State team that they've been able to do a nice job locking down from three-point range, 62nd in the country with that regard. Jacksonville State should be able to do a relatively solid job in this spot down low as well. You don't necessarily have a supreme rebounder with Jawan Purdue leading the way with about 5.7 rebounds per game, but Marcellus Brigham along with Mason Nicholson are both able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game, and this is a Middle Tennessee team that is supposed to be a very defense-oriented team that really doesn't do a tremendous job on the glass. 225th in all of college basketball when it comes to their rebound rate. Jacksonville State, they're clocking in more in the neighborhood about 56. So I do think that they're going to be able to win the battle down low. Jacksonville State, even though they do have about 13.5 turnovers per game, they do a little bit of a better job of protecting the ball. You've got Quincy Clark being able to give you 2.5 assists per contest, and for Middle Tennessee, not having a single player on the roster that gives you north of 2 assists per game. I do think that that's going to be relative doomsday for them. I do think that things are going to be close enough for some late game fouling. I think we went just a little bit too far with this total. Set my total at 124, so I'm going to be looking at the over. But with Jacksonville State, I do think that they go on the road, get the job done in a nip and tuck game. I'm going to be willing to take Jacksonville State, willing to lay up to 2 with them to go along with the over. 709, 710 on the betting board. Wichita State plays us to East Carolina. East Carolina does find themselves as an underdog of between 3.5 to 4 points in your total on this game. It is between 145.5 and 146. And with Wichita State, I did set them as a favorite of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Wichita State team that has been on the wrong end of a lot of nip and tuck games, but I do think that they're going to be able to bust through here. It is a Wichita State squad that still has been able to do a relatively solid job on the glass. You've got 3 separate guys on the roster that will be able to give you north of 6 rebounds per game, with your main guy being Dalen Original, being able to supply the team with about 7.5 rebounds per game. And then from there, Kenny Poto, coupled with Quincy Ballard, they've been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game, while Kobe Rogers has been your main shooter, shooting about 39% from three-point range, 16 points per contest. This is a Wichita State team that overall, they do shoot just 31.5% from distance. They shoot 67% at the free throw line. And for East Carolina, it's been a very misleading season defensively for them, because if you look at the raw points allowed on a per possession basis, East Carolina is clocking in 178th, but much of that that game when Brandon Johnson was either out of the fold or dealing with an illness. Johnson has missed a few games this season, and he's been a big difference maker for the team. Down low, 14 points, 9 boards, shoots about 35% from three-point range. For a team that as a whole, they only shoot about 31% from three-point range. They do a nice job taking care of the ball with 11 turnovers a game, as R.J. Felton, Ezra Azar, and they've been able to do a nice job combining for about 30.5 points per contest. But it's a little bit of a top-heavy team that has not gotten a ton out of Cam Hayes. Cam Hayes was one of those two-time transfers that came into the fold a little bit late or on during the season, but he's only shooting 23.5% from three, 2 turnovers with 7.5 points per game. He just has not been worth the squeeze this far this season. Meanwhile, you've got a Wichita State team that, no doubt about it, they've been the victims of some bad shooting variance, as they had that game against Memphis where Memphis shot like 60% from three-point range. But you do take a look at this Wichita State team as a whole, they're still doing a relatively solid job holding up defensively. They're still a top 100 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And East Carolina has been a top 75 team with regards to their opponent's three-point shooting percentage defense as well. But where East Carolina has really been getting gashed is, for one, they're not really generating a lot of turnovers, which has allowed for a lot of clean possessions. And two, East Carolina very vulnerable down low against a Wichita State team that has had lots of failures with regards to shooting from three. So East Carolina, 256th in the country with regards to opponent's two-point shooting percentage, I think is a big concern here. So did set Wichita State as a favorite of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And with regards to this total, I did set mine at a 143. So here at the 145.5, diving under to go along with Wichita State. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. It is Auburn, and they hit the road face-off against Alabama. Alabama, a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite. Your total between 164.5 and 165.5. I said Alabama's a 3.5 point favorite. Going to be willing to lay the number now. Personally, I would set Auburn as a favorite on a neutral court, but I awarded way more than 3 points in this rivalry spot in a game where Alabama just absolutely has to have this game, in my opinion. It's an Alabama team that has been just such a different team at home rather than on the road with regards to their defense as well. They allow opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range in a road/neutral court environment. At home, that goes down to about 28%. And when it comes to this Alabama team, this is a squad that certainly leaves quite a bit of something to be desired with regards to their defense. But again, they're giving up about 19 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. Going up against an Auburn team that really has been checking all the boxes. 7th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They've got a really good rebound rate with G&I Broom absolutely cleaning up, being able to give the team 8+ rebounds per game. Auburn, a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as Aiden Holloway has done a nice job leading this team, being able to give them north of 10 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. He's been able to check all the boxes, and it's an Auburn team that they do a tremendous job in terms of being able to take care of the ball. It's an Auburn team that, in terms of turnovers, it's only about 10.5 per contest, and it's an Alabama team that they've done a great job of being able to go up-tempo while staying in control themselves. About 12.5 turnovers per game while shooting 39% from three-point range. Mark Sears shoots 47.5% from the outside, 20 points per game. He's the best pure scorer they're going to be finding in this one. And then for Alabama, it's all about rebounding by committee, because right now Grant Nelson, he's your top rebounder. He's been able to give you about 5.8 rebounds per game. And despite the fact that you don't have that one guy that's going to go out there and give you a double-figure amount of boards or anything like that, Alabama has actually been 26th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. So I've been highly impressed there. It's an Auburn team that, by the way, they actually have a better rebound rate on the road / in a neutral court environment rather than at home. And they've been able to get the best of Jalen Wilson when he's been away from home. In roadside neutral court environments for Wilson, 12.5 points, 6 boards, 2 assists on 40% three-point shooting. Those are actually better than his overall season numbers. Chad Baker-Mazara being able to shoot 40% from three. He's been massive for this team as well. And I do think that you're going to get a relatively good up-and-down game. It's an Auburn team that has gotten to at least 80 in 4 of their last 5 games, but they've also given up 65 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it's an Alabama team that certainly has had their warts with regards to defense. It doesn't sound like much, but they've now given up 75 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, while they've gone to at least 74 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. Got a lot of fortes with both of these teams. I did set my total of 163.5. I do tend to think that in a rivalry matchup like this, things just get slowed down a little bit more, so I'm going to be looking at the under, but I do think that Alabama, in the end, they are able to defend their home court in the shall we say, Iron Bowl out there on the hardwood. So I did set my number at a 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with Alabama and looking at the under. 7-13, 7-14 on the betting board. Valparaiso is going to be on the road facing off against Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois does find themselves as 14-point favorites. Your total is between 136 and 137. Did set my total 132. Looking at the under, it's a Southern Illinois team that finds themselves outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. And Southern Illinois has been able to do a really good job putting the clamps down on defense. They had a rough go of it when they played against Drake about a week and a half or so ago. They gave up 76 points in that spot. But all in all, you take a look at the Southern Illinois team, and they have given up 70 points or fewer in all but one of their games ever since the beginning of the month of December. And that was that game that I mentioned against Drake. So the team has done a nice job getting things played at their speed. It's a team that also has Xavier Johnson, who's third in the country with regards to scoring, 23.2 points, 6 assists, 4 boards per contest, while shooting 41% from three-point range. They're going up against a Valparaiso team that has been a little bit better defensively, though. Valparaiso, they're able to do a good job of being able to guard the three-point arc. They're allowing opponents to shoot actually less from three-point range in a roadside shoot court environment rather than home. They allow opponents to shoot about 34.5% from distance when they're away from home, and it is a Valparaiso team that has been able to get a little bit of top-end talent. Isaiah Stafford has been able to give you about 15 points per contest. The big key for Valparaiso, are they able to do anything on the glass whatsoever? Because this is a Southern Illinois team that you're able to get down low. You've got Clarence Rupert for the team giving you about 6 or so rebounds per game, and then you've been able to get about 4 boards out of Troy D'Amico, and really past that, it's not been a whole heck of a lot of anything, but this is also a Valparaiso team that in terms of their rebound rate, just 288th in all of college basketball. That's a big, giant concern. You need a little bit more than Jackson Edwards, who's giving you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Jerome Palm had a good start to the season, then just inexplicably, he got just vanished from the lineup. I have no idea why. And now you've got Casper Sepp, who's able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. You have to wonder if the same thing is going to be happening to our good friend and Mr. Sepp for a Valparaiso team that overall, they turn the ball over 12 times per contest, but they only shoot about 32% from three-point range. You've had Cooper Schweiger be able to chip in there about 11 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but it's a Valparaiso team that they just seem rhymeless and reasonless. So Valparaiso defense has really been regressing as well, giving up 77 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games, including the last time they played against Southern Illinois at home. They lost. They were unable to really give the world's greatest effort there, though. If you took the 9.5 late in that game, you were able to get it covered despite the fact that Valparaiso was getting crushed just all throughout this game. It was a spot where there was a lot of window dressing on that one for Southern Illinois. They did turn the ball over 11 times to Valparaiso's 12, but they were able to win the rebound battle, and legitimately they won every facet of the game. I do think that Southern Illinois going to do a lot of the same here. I do think that Southern Illinois going to cool off from the north of 50% that they shot from 3 that night, and I did set my number at a 14. I'm seeing a few 13.5s out there. That's the max I'm willing to lay with Southern Illinois, but going to be willing to lay it. I think that this is going to be a slow down slog, so I also set my total 132. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be looking at Southern Illinois willing to lay up to 13.5 with them. 7-15, 7-16 on the betting board. Drake hits the road. They're facing off against Missouri State, and Missouri State just find themselves as a underdog of 7 to 7.5 points. Your total on this game is between 141.5 and 142, and I did set Missouri State as an underdog of 5.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take those points. It's a Drake team that has been able to do a really good job in terms of both offense and defense, ranking in the top 85 nationally in both respects in terms of points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. And this is a Drake team that I do think is going to do a solid job down low, despite having just 2 guys giving North 3.3 rebounds per game. Darnell Brody is someone that's 6'10". He's been able to give you about 8.5 boards, 11.5 points per contest, and back it up for Tucker DeVries. 20 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists, steal 1.5 per contest, while shooting about 34.5% from three-point range. They go up against a Missouri State team that they've been a little bit wobbly with regards to their rebounding recently. Overall for the season, they're about 67th in the country with regards to rebound rate, but the defense has been having a little bit of regression recently, giving up 77 plus points in 3 out of their last 5 games. Part of it is they're going up against a really good competition, but 66 points or fewer for Missouri as well on offense in 4 out of their last 5 games. They're failing to be able to get second chance opportunities on the glass. You still do have a trio of guys, Chance Moore, Donovan Clay, along with NJ Benson. I'll give you at least 5.5 rebounds per game. Clay and Moore have been able to combine for about 25 points per contest, but 3-point shooting has really regressed for the team, shooting about 31.3% from 3-point range for a team that also turns the ball over 12.5 times per contest. And for Missouri State, they were playing quite fast to begin the season. Maybe they need to go back to that a little bit more, because even though they were giving up more raw points, overall in games, in terms of points allowed on a per possession, it was actually a little bit better when they were playing faster. Now they've slowed down. They're back outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game, and they are a scuffling. You've got a Drake team that they like to play under control as well, 233rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Also Mason, your main man for this Missouri State team, has been able to give you about 17 points, 3.5 assists, shoots 35.5% from three-point range, and he's been a constant for the team, 15-plus points in each of the team's last 4 games after he was dealing with a little bit of an injury towards being part of the season. But that's with Matthew Lee turning the ball for 3.6 times per contest, a top 10 mark to the negative in all of college basketball. I do think that's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle for Missouri State, but I do think that they're going to be making this game very sloppy and slow. It's a Drake team that has been very good with their defense, giving up 58 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. But I do think that for Missouri State, they're going to be able to hold in there with the way that they've been able to guard the arc in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Missouri State team that, even with all of their struggles, they're currently clocking in right around 31st in the country with that regard, with opponents shooting just 26.8% from 3-point range against them at home. So I did set my line at a 5.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Missouri State, and did set my total 139.5 with the way that both of these teams have been playing. So looking under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Missouri State. 7-17, 7-18 on the betting board. UTSA meet me for the Roadrunners. They play host to Tulane. Tulane does find themselves as 7 to 7.5 point favorites. Your total on this game 170.5 to 171, and set my total at a 168. So we're going to be taking a look at the under just barely. It's a UTSA team that is unquestionably getting destroyed on defense outside the top 260 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, I just don't know if UTSA is going to be able to do their part with this total, as it's a Tulane team that they play at warp speed. They're a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, and it is a Tulane team that in a roadside court environment, they do allow opponents to shoot 37.3% from 3-point range, but Tulane has been relatively okay at being able to hit the defensive boards, not allow a lot of second chances, and you've got good versatility with a Tulane team that they don't necessarily have a ton of depth. So I do have to question whether or not they're going to be able to keep up this tempo for the entirety of the season. It's a Tulane bunch that has been able to get a lot out of Kevin Cross. He's a 6'8", two-and-all player, giving you about 17 points, 8 boards, 4.5 assists on 38% 3-point shooting. Jalen Forbes had a little bit of a rough start to the season. He's now up to being able to give you about 15 points per contest. Zion James, 43% 3-point shooter, 14.5 points per contest. And for Tulane, what has been working out really well for them, being able to generate turnovers. Each of your top 4 scorers do give you at least a steal and a half per contest. If you look at turnovers forced on a per game basis, this is a Tulane team that does rank in the top 50 with that regard, and they go up against a UTSA team that they are turning the ball over right around 12 and a half times per contest. This is a UTSA team that they're going to give you the green light to be able to shoot from 3-point range as well. UTSA 335th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but that just fell to about 33.9% at home, north of 40% in a roadside court environment, and Carlton Lingard being able to supply 10 points, 6 boards, and right around 6'11" or so is able to pop some threes. That's going to be of impact for this UTSA team. Coupled with that, you've also been able to get Jordan Ivy Curry into the fold, give you 19.5 points, 6 boards, 4 assists in the 9 games since he has been back in the fold. Ivy Curry was one of those 2-time transfers that had to sit out to begin the season, and after it took him 2 games to be able to figure things out, this UTSA team has really been able to go on a run with regards to their offense. For UTSA, they've gotten to at least 75 points and now 6 out of their last 7 games, so it is a relatively interesting circumstance here. I do think that Tulane is going to be able to rise up just a little bit more with their defense. It's a UTSA team that has a lot of shooting variance. You do have a guy in Christian Tucker who's been able to give you 5.5 assists, 13 points per contest, but in the end, I do think that Tulane is going to be able to pull this one out and be able to make it just a little bit lower scoring. I did set my number at 8. I'm going to be one to lay the number, and did set my total at a 168. It's also looking under. 719, 720 on the betting board. It is Rice. We give our Tulane Kiffin Go Elves. They play us to the other Owls of Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, a 12 to 12.5 point favorite. Your total between 152 and 153.5. Is this going to be the first cover for Rice in conference play? I say no. I set my number at 10. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Rice. Now, it's a Rice team that certainly has been a massive disappointment this season, just 7-11 straight up, but Max Fiedler, I think, is going to be an issue for this Florida Atlantic team. Fiedler is saying 6'11", and he's got all sorts of versatility. 10 points, 9.5 boards, and 5 assists with his size. How this Rice team is not winning with a guy like that, well, I can tell you why. It's because their defense has been absolutely awful. in games not involving the SWAC, the Southland, along with Division II foes. Rice has given up north of 80 points in every one of their games thus far this season. It has been really, really bad for them. Rice 323rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot about 38% from three-point range at home. I should say, had been giving up north of 80 points in every one of their games prior to that game against Temple. That's just an indictment on how bad Temple is right now. But that said, for Rice, you've got out there in the backcourt two guys I think should be able to bloom a little bit more towards the back half of the season. Travis Evie along with Makai Mason. Evie is a fifth-year guy that has never shot below 34% from three-point range for the entirety of the season. He and Mason combined shoot about 31.5% from distance. They're giving you combined 5 assists, about 30.5 points per contest. I think we should see a little bit of positivity there, especially against a Florida Atlantic team as well outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And it's a Florida Atlantic team that certainly is giving up the arc. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, Florida Atlantic currently 222nd in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot 37.2% from distance in a roadside shoot record environment. And when it comes to this Florida Atlantic team, it's been the John L. Davis show in the backcourt. It has been incredible being able to supply the team with 18.5 points per game from three-point range, shoots 47.5%, 3 assists, 1.7 steals per game, and then Elijah Martin chips in there, 13.5 points, but you do have Vladislav Golden, give you 7 rebounds per game. It's a Florida Atlantic team that's still a top 150 team with regards to a rebound rate. Would like to see a little bit more of Giancarlo Rosado, but coming off the bench, he's a relatively solid rim protector for this team as well, but just feels like the backcourt rotations, the way that they have been guarding the arc has just not been satisfactory. It's been leading to them getting gashed for a whole bunch of points, and I could see a very similar circumstance happening here. We've been seeing a lot of overs for Florida Atlantic recently, and it's a Rice team that certainly they've been stuck in the mud with regards to their offense, but I do think that they're going to get pulled out by a Florida Atlantic team that's now given up at least 73 points in each of their last 4 games, and last time a team scored fewer than 70 points against Florida Atlantic, you have to go all the way back to January 2nd. It's been a relatively rough go of it for this FAU defense, so it is a circumstance where I did set my total at 156. So I'm going to be looking at the over and getting north of 10, going to be looking at the points with Rice. Go Owls, 721, 722 on the betting board. Indiana State, it's for a face-off against UIC. Illinois Chicago is a 10 to 10.5 point home underdog. Totals between 151 and 152. Set my number at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with the UIC. Indiana State has been incredible with their offense. They're a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Much of that is because they're a top 30 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, but UIC has been amazing at cutting off the three-point arc. 18th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, even though Illinois Chicago doesn't necessarily have ideal size. I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there. I'm going to be looking at the points with them as I did set them as an underdog, more like 6.5 points. With this UIC squad, you've got Toby Okani, who's able to give you all sorts of versatility, right around 12 points, 6 boards per contest, and a really good three-point shooter in Isaiah Rivera. Rivera has been able to shoot darn near 40% from three-point range, and as a whole, UIC is shooting north of 35% from three-point range, going up against an Indiana State team that, while they've been incredible on offense, defense, they can be a little bit liable, and they can be a team that gives it up a little bit more. For Indiana State, in terms of their opponent's three-point shooting percentage, currently they're clocking in 131st in all of college basketball, and it's really a tale of home and road splits. They're allowing opponents to shoot 26.5% from three-point range at home in a roadside church corner environment. This does go up to about 36.5% from distance. Now, for Indiana State, they are a team that is very good defensively at home, but they're giving up 22 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside church corner environment as well. So, even though you do have a UIC team that has been turning the ball over right around about 13 times per contest, having someone like a CJ Jackson giving out north of 4.5 assists per game, I think is going to be big, because with Indiana State, you've got weapons upon weapons. Robbie Avila is 6'10". He's been able to supply the team with about 7 boards, 15 points, shoots north of 40% from three-point range, while doling out north of 4 assists per contest. Julian Larry, Xavier Bledson, they've been able to combine for about 7 assists, 3.9 turnovers per game, both shooting north of 40% from 3, and Larry shoots 55.5% from three-point range. And for Indiana State, of your top 6 scorers, you've got 5 of them shooting north of 42.3% from three-point range. I apologize, but I just think that we're going to see a little bit of regression here, and I do think that Indiana State, with the way that they guard the arc, is going to allow the CIC team to be able to just hang around there and weasel their way to a cover. So I did set my line at a 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take the double figures, and still think that Indiana State is going to get theirs, but I do think that UIC knocks down some open looks. So going to be taking a look at this total over, set my total 152.5, and taking a look at the points with UIC. 723, 724 on the betting board. St. John's is going to be playing us Villanova, and Villanova does find themselves as a underdog of 3.5 to 4.5 points. Your total is 145.5. I did set Villanova as an underdog of 4 points. So you're at the 3.5. That's the most I'm willing to lay with St. John's, but I'm going to be willing to lay. And this was an opener of 2.5, by the way. So number has been quite a bit on the move. It is a Villanova bunch that has been having their issues, just having Justin Moore be out there on the floor. And when he has been out there on the floor, he's been relatively solid. He's been able to give you about 2.5 assists, double-figure amount of points per contest, but it is a Villanova team that, even though they've been able to get better rebounding this year, you've got a pair of guys in Eric Dixon along Tyler Burton who have been able to supply the team with about 14 rebounds per game. Dixon shoots about 34.5% from three-point range. It just feels like the offense is very touch and go. If you take a look at their last 5 games, they have scored 66, 71, 94, 74, and 65 points. And the last time they played against St. John's, they gave up 81 points. With St. John's in that game going 7 of 16 from three-point range, St. John's was able to win the rebound battle 39 to 36, and that was despite the fact that Joel Soriano only had 8 rebounds in that game, and he should be the best low post presence in this one. 9.5 boards, 16 points per game, though I will say, first time around, that was with Justin Moore out of the fold, and Villanova, they actually won the turnover battle 12 to 11, but you tell that they were having a tough time forming good looks. They went just 6 of 28 from three-point range. You're going up against the St. John's team that's a little bit more brisk with regards to their tempo, but it's not like they're playing at warp speed. It's been Dennis Jenkins really being able to supply the team with some good facilitation, 5.5 assists, being able to give you about 13.5 points per contest. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3. And legitimately for St. John's, out of your top 6 scorers, other than Joel Soriano, who's taking a very limited amount of threes, you don't have anyone that shoots north of 34% from distance. They should be able to find some open looks. So against the Villanova team that over the last few years in general, they have been a little bit vulnerable from three-point range. Villanova is currently 183rd in the country with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. I do think that you're going to be able to have this team be able to do a solid job taking care of the ball against the Villanova team that really doesn't generate a lot of turnovers. And much like we saw the first time around, I do think that St. John's wins the rebound battle and they get the job done in this one. I do think that things are going to be a little bit lower scoring. It's a Villanova team that has been doing a bit of a better job with regards to their defense, giving up fewer than 70 points in 2 of the 3 games since these two teams played first time around. And it is a St. John's team that they have scored 72 points or fewer in each of their last 3 games. So this is a spot where I set my total at 142, diving under on St. John's, 1 to lay up to 3.5 with them. 725, 726 on the main board. Florida plays us to Mississippi State. Mississippi State does find themselves as 3 to 3.5 point underdogs. Total on this game between 154.5 and 155.5. I made Mississippi State the favorite of 1.5. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line. It's a Florida team that I'm just not in on. They've been able to get to 80 points in a lot of these games, and they're a top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. A lot of this is because they have been able to get second chances. Florida, a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to the percentage of their misses that they get as an offensive rebound. Alex Condon, Micah Handglotton, along Terry Samuel, all give you north of 7 rebounds per game. They're the only team in all of college basketball with 3 separate players giving you north of 7 boards per contest, but for Florida, they turn the ball over 13 times per contest. They shoot 67% at the free throw line, 33% from 3. Even though they are a team that is in the top 50 with regards to total possessions per game, that's still unsatisfactory. And then you've got a Mississippi State team that they should be able to win this battle down low. Tolu Smith, Jimmy Bell Jr. are both being able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. And then you've been able to have Charles Matthews be able to give you about 9 points, 6 boards. It's a Mississippi State team that still doesn't shoot it great from three-point range, but they're now shooting about 32% from 3, a whole heck of a lot better than they did a season ago. You've been able to get a little bit of facilitation out of Matthews, along with the transfer from Oregon State and Deshaun Davis, who have been able to combine for about 6 assists per contest, and having Tolu Smith back in the fold really helps this team offensively as well. 19.7 points per game out of them. With Tolu Smith in the fold, this team has been able to get to at least 74 points in now 3 out of their last 4 games, and the team defensively, certainly they've had some bumps along the way, but they still have been able to do a solid job with him out there on the court. He has been able to help the team out, giving up 72 points or fewer, and now 4 out of their 6 games with him back. So I do think that Mississippi State going to be just fine there. It's a Mississippi State team that's in the top 25 with regards to rebound rate and points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against the Florida team that their defense has truly been all over the place. They've given up 85 plus points in 3 of their last 5 games, and in the other 2 games they gave up fewer than 70. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give when it comes to this Florida team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are clocking in right around 130th, and they've been much better at the swamp. They're giving up 17.1 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. But what this team needs to do is guard inside, because this is a Mississippi State team that they're not going to go out there and take a whole bunch of threes. And Florida, they're a team that does rank 65th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. But this is a Mississippi State team that they're very strong in the interior as well. They're about 105th in the country with this regard, and I do think that Mississippi State going to do a nice job on the inside. And with Florida just turning the ball over a little bit too much, even with Zion pulling in the fold, I do like Mississippi State in the spot. Going to be taking the Bulldogs outright on the money line, set them as 1.5 point favorite, and did semi-total at a 149.5. I think that Mississippi State and their defense holds up. Looking at the under and Mississippi State outright on the money line. 727, 728 on the betting board. Illinois hits the road face-off against Northwestern, and Northwestern does find themselves as an underdog of 3.5 to 4 points, with your total between 147 and 147.5. I did set Illinois as a favorite of 4 points, so here at 3.5, it's the most I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. It's a Northwestern team that has now fallen on some tough times defensively, outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and biggest reason why they have struggled so much, they're just not able to hit the boards. Brooks Barnizer is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, and for Northwestern, when you pair that up with the fact that they're 299th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, that's really not too tremendous. It's an Illinois team that they continue to be a top 35 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, top 40 team in terms of being able to cut off the three-pointers. Now Northwestern does a solid job of being able to generate turnovers, top 75 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, with Boo Buie being able to lead the way. He gives you 5 assists, he gives you multiple steals, 17 plus points per contest, but they have to go up against an Illinois team that now with Terrence Shannon back in the fold, each other top 6 scorers do give you at least 6 rebounds per game. It's an Illinois team that now has Marcus Domask being able to find himself as well. He's looking more like the Marcus Domask that we saw at Southern Illinois. Should be taking a little bit of a step back with having Shannon now back in the fold, but 12 plus points in each of the team's last 5 games. He's had 3 plus assists in 4 of the team's last 5 as well, going up against a Northwestern bunch in which you do have guys that are able to bomb it from 3-point range. Ryan Langborg, Ty Berry are both able to give you about 11.5 points per contest, shooting a fine 39% from 3-point range. And for Northwestern, you've got Barnizer, who I was mentioning before, giving you also about 14.5 points per contest, but it's a very top-heavy team. Outside of your core 4, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 7 points with 3.7 rebounds per game. It's a team with a very short rotation and one that already lost Illinois by kind of 96 to 66 earlier in the season. I don't think it's going to be quite to that extent, but I think that Illinois just matches up very well. And by the way, that game that Illinois won by so many points, they were doing that without having Mr. Shannon in the fold, and Coleman Hawkins really like what he's doing as well for this Illinois team. 11 points, 6 boards, 3 assists at 6'10", sparing 35% of his threes. Too much versatility. Too many guys are able to hit the glass for Illinois. I do think that the Fighting Illini win and cover. Set this line at 4, so I'm willing to lay up to 3.5 with Illinois, and it's semi-total at 142. I don't think we see what we saw last time around, and Illinois is legitimately a good defensive team going up against a Northwestern team well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. So looking at the under, and going to be willing to lay with Illinois. 729, 730 on the betting board. DePaul is going to be playing us in Marquette. Marquette does find themselves as 17 to 17.5 point favorites. Your totals between 147 and 147.5. Set my line at 17.5. 17 is the max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is just a really, really bad DePaul team. I mean, my goodness gracious, they're outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 4.6 rebounds per game. It's a DePaul team that just continues to get gashed defensively. DePaul 342nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I recognize that this is a Marquette team that's not the same offensively this season. They're shooting less than 33% from 3-point range, but I want to know what a get-right spot is. That's going up against DePaul right here. You've got a guy in Tyler Kolek who has been a little bit shaky recently, but he's still for the season has been able to supply you with about 14.5 points. Jumping in there, 7 assists, 5 boards, shooting 35% from 3-point range. Last 2 games, we combined 22 assists to 5 turnovers against St. John's and Villanova. He's back to being in good form. Cam Jones has been able to give you 15 points per contest, and with Marquette, main kryptonite you've always got with this team is them being outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Only got the best rebounder in this game. Moso Ogudero is able to give you 7 boards, 14 points per game. His main competition is Jeremiah Odin, giving you about 4 boards per contest for a DePaul team that they're shooting about 34% from 3, but they turn the ball over 13 times per contest as a low-tempo team. Deshaun Nelson has a little bit of versatility, 11.5 points, 4 boards, but I mean, if you can name what this DePaul team is doing right, you'll let me know. 71.8% free throw shooting percentage. Perhaps that's it, but I mean, man, it's just not great to say the least. And they go up against a Marquette team that has been so battle-tested, 38th in the country, turns points allowed on a per possession basis, takes a little bit of a nosedive on the road, but even the DePaul fan base has just pretty much punted on the season. I mean, those poor people, George Mikan needs to be rolling over in his grave right now. They have no idea who their coach is going to be moving forward. And typically, you might see a little bit of a bump when it comes to situations like this with DePaul, but I just don't know what sort of rally there's going to be with the DePaul team, that they just don't have enough talent to be able to rally around a new voice. So it is a circumstance where I did set this Marquette team as a 17.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 17. And with regards to total, set my total at 147.5. You've got a Marquette team that they've been finding their swagger a little bit more on offense. Recognize that they have been held to 75 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, but for DePaul, they've given up 84 plus in 3 out of their last 4 games, and I think that Marquette could be able to go out here for 85 plus. So set my total at a 147.5. I'm looking at the over. And with Marquette, I'm willing to lay up to 17 with them. 731, 732 on the betting board. Ole Miss is going to be playing out to Arkansas. Arkansas does find themselves as an underdog of 5 to 5.5 points. Totals between 153 and 153.5. Did set my total at 149. I'm looking at the under. It is an Arkansas team that ranks well outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I just don't know what you're going to be able to get offensively out of this team as well. It is an Arkansas team that has been all over the place with that respect, as you've got 2 main scorers for this team. Draymond Mark, along with K-Leaf Battle. They have been tremendous in the backcourt, with Battle only about 11.5 points per contest, but shoots 40% from 3, and then Mark shoots north of 40% from the outside, 18 points per game. You just don't have a lot down low. You've got Mr. Trayvon Brazil giving you 9 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. Only guy on the roster that's really giving you north of 5 rebounds per contest. Chandler Lawson has been able to give you a few blocks, but this is an Arkansas team that, when it comes to their rebound rate, they're clocking in outside the top 200, and it's an Ole Miss team that I expected them to be a whole heck of a lot better on the glass themselves. They're about 252nd with regards to rebound rate, but at the very least, you know that they've got the tools to be successful, and you've also got a giant of the earth in Jamarian Sharp, who has been able to do a very solid job being able to give the team 2.8 blocks per contest. Musa Cisse, he's up to about 4.5 boards, 1.3 blocks per contest, and this is an Ole Miss team that's shooting 38.3% from 3-point range. You're starting to regress a little bit, which you were expecting, but now they get to go up against an Arkansas bunch that is about 178th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They just have not been able to do a good job of holding up on that side of things, and this is an Ole Miss team that they do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers per game, as well as you've got Jalen Murray, Matthew Morrell, along with Alan Flanagan, being able to combine for about 5.2 steals per contest. Morrell and Flanagan combine for about 33 points per game as well, and Flanagan has been able to give you 7 rebounds per game as well. Jamin Brakefield, 12 points on 37% 3-point shooting, so you've got all sorts of good 3-point shooting for the team. Now you've been able to get Brandon Murray in the fold. Hasn't necessarily elevated the team too much. He's giving you about 5.5 points on a mid-30s 3-point shooting percentage, but it does give the team another weapon to be able to work with, and the big key for Ole Miss, they themselves being able to hold up with regards to guarding the 3-point arc, and thus far this season they've been able to do so, especially at home. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 28.4% from 3-point range, 37.1% in a road/neutral court environment. I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a button-up game. I do think that Chris Beard is going to have this Ole Miss team playing better defense moving forward, and it's an Ole Miss team that's relatively mid-tempo. They're not looking to run it and gun it. Arkansas, they are looking to a little bit more, and they've been a bit out of sorts with that, as it's been an Arkansas team that has now scored fewer than 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games. It's an Ole Miss team that they themselves starting to slow down offensively, fewer than 70 points that they're at their last 5 games. So is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take a look at the under, and this was an opener of 3.5. I personally laid the opener on this one. Now we're up to a 5 to a 5.5. I set my number at 5. Personally, I would see if this could maybe get back down to a 4.5. If I had to play it right now, I would take the 5.5. Like I said, though, I personally played the opener in this one. I think that it's tough, even at a 5.5, to take a look at Arkansas. But if it's the best you've got, it's the best you've got. It's a tough team to be able to back right now. But at 5.5 or more, I would look at Arkansas, as it is a Mississippi team that is a little bit wobbly themselves. So at this number specifically, I would take a look at Arkansas. But again, I would wait and see if this can come back a little bit closer to the opener and take a look at the under as well. 733, 734 on the betting board. Kansas State is playing on the road against Iowa State. Iowa State is an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. Your total 134 to 134.5 with Iowa State. Did set them as a favorite of 8.5 points, so 8 is the max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. It's an Iowa State team that continues to be just very consistent with regards to their defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a top 10 team in all of college basketball, a top 5 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis as well. Going up against the Kansas State squad that has been actually really good with their defense this year. In regulation, they've given up north of 70 2 points, I believe, twice this far this season. So, I mean, that's been tremendous. They've given up more than that with the advent of like overtimes, double overtimes, what have you. I'm talking about regulation and regulation only, but for this Kansas State team, you do need a little bit more from the outside. They're shooting about 31.5% from three-point range, and the 14.7 turnovers per game, that is a big, giant red flag for me. Now, with Kansas State, they've done a good job of being able to guard the three-point arc in a roadside-shoot-corner environment. Opponents are shooting 28.8% from three-point range. That's a top 40 mark in all of college basketball. That said, when you're just giving the ball away left and right, that's going to make it very difficult on you, as Kansas State, in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis, this team is ringing up well outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, the 339th. And Iowa State, it's not like they're amazing at taking care of the ball, but, they're 67th in all of college basketball. That's been coming up a little bit in Big 12 play. That's to be expected. And the big question mark that you do have with Iowa State, Damon Lipsby, is he going to be able to play in this game? Because when they were without him, they were able to get the job done. We were talking about this with Drake Toll in the last segment, but for Lipsby, he's able to do a little bit of everything. He's able to give you 3 steals. He's able to chip in there a double-figure amount of points. He's able to give you 5 boards. Personally, I'm thinking that there's a good chance that Lipsby is going to be able to give it a go, but it's probably not going to be fully 100%, so I sort of have taken a middle ground approach on this one, so we shall wait and see there. And even if Lipsby is completely out of the fold in this one, you still have Keshawn Gilbert. Give you 4.5 assists, 1.7 steals, 13.5 points per game. And again, we saw with Iowa State over the weekend, they were able to win without Damon Lipsby in the fold on the road against TCU. That's a really tough place to play. That shows what sort of depth you've got. And you've got Milan Mimosilovic, who's a 6'8" combo player, shooting 39% for three-point range, able to give you about 13 points per contest. It is a Kansas State team that they themselves going to do a solid job of being able to take the ball away. And I do think that Iowa State is going to have some issues with that, especially if you've got a hampered / not out there Damon Lipsby. That said, this is an Iowa State team I think is going to be able to do an okay job on the glass, despite the fact that Arthur Kaluma, he's going to be the best rebounder in this game. He's able to give you about 8 rebounds per game, and David Ngesson, he has been able to do a solid job as well. Give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. Kansas State last year was very much built around their backcourt and their three-point shooting. This year, they're really building themselves around just being able to pound the glass. Kansas State, a team that ranks 53rd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Iowa State, they're more around 64th. So I do think that Iowa State going to be able to get it done with or without Lipsby. I did set this team as an 8.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and I think we're in for a low-scoring slog. Set my total at 130.5. Just have not seen a lot of offense out of Kansas State, but we've seen a ton of defense, and I think that this is going to be a game that is going to be black and blue. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8 with Iowa State, 735, 736 on the betting board. Washington State plays us to Utah. Utah does find themselves as a 1-point favorite / a pick 'em. Totals between 145.5 and 147, and I did say Utah as a underdog of 1.5 points. I'm going to be looking at Washington State outright on the money line. As a Washington State team that has been a top 60 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and we always talk about home court advantage. It's a big advantage being able to play out there at Pullman. For Washington State, they are overall 58th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up 7.3 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. And you've been able to get some good production out of Miles Rice. Rice has been really the top guy for this lineup, being able to supply the team with about 15 points per contest. Can be a little bit inconsistent with regards to his three-point shooting for a Washington State team that, as a whole, from distance, they're shooting about 34% from three. Rice himself is about 35%, but you've got down low Andre Yagmoski, who's been able to do a nice job of teaming up with Ruben Chenelu. Hopefully I said that correctly. Both of these guys give me about 5.5 rebounds per game. Both are international men of mystery that have also been able to combine for about 2.5 blocks per contest as well, despite the fact that Joseph Yusufu has been a little bit of a, shall we say, non-factor for this team coming in from Kansas. This has been a Washington State team that on offense at home, they are generating about 17.3 points more per 100 possessions rather than in a roadside shoot-your-current environment. And you're going up against a Utah team that they give up north of 28 points more per 100 possessions when away from home rather than at home. You've got massive home and road splits with them. This is a Utah team that, with regards to their offense, they're scoring about 10.4 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home, so not as big of a split as with regards to the defense, but this has been a team that's been dealing with a little bit of an injury to Raleigh Worcester. Your main point guard who's giving you about 5.5 assists, 10 points per contest. Now, it helps to have a guy like a Davion Smith who's been able to supply the team with 10.5 points, 5.5 assists. He's shooting about 42.5% from three-point range, and Brandon Carlson, being 7 feet tall, shooting 34% from three with about 17 points per contest. That's been very helpful as well, but I do think that Washington State going to be able to do a relatively solid job on the glass. This is a Utah team that they've still got Kaiba Kita, who's been able to do a good job, giving you about 5 to 6 rebounds per game overall for the season. It's a Utah team that's about 57th in the country with regards to rebound rate. That said, this is a Washington State team that's about 39th with that regard. Utah has been a rocket ship with their offense, getting to at least 73 points in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Washington State team that's been able to do a nice job tying teams down in regulation, because that Cal game that went to overtime, giving up 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, with games against Arizona thrown in there as well. So I do think that Washington State going to be able to slow down a Utah team that just isn't the same team when they're away from home. I'm going to be taking a look at Washington State outright on the money line, and both of these are relatively low tempo teams. So I set my total 141.5, diving under and looking at Washington State on the money line. 737, 738 on the betting board. Colorado State, it's a red face off against Nevada. Nevada does find themselves as 2.5 point favorites. Your total is 145.5 to 146. Set my line at 2. I do think that Nevada should be a very slight favorite here, but getting north of a deuce, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Colorado State. Colorado State does a lot of what Nevada does. They just don't beat themselves. Both of these teams, Nevada, they're only turning the ball over right around 10.5 to 11 times per contest. You've got someone that I really like in Jared Lucas, who's been able to give you 37.5% three-point shooting with about 17 points per game. He's able to guard man-to-man, and then he's able to guard zone. And for Nevada, this is a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that you've only got one guy that gives you north of 5.2 rebounds per game. That'd be Nick Davidson. Davidson has been able to do a solid job holding up down low. He's also able to give you a little bit from the outside, though he's only shooting about 25% from 3 right now. Meanwhile, you've got Keenan Blackshear, who's Mr. Versatile and do it all. 16 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, 1.3 steals per contest. And then on the flip side, you've got a Colorado State team that has one of the best overall point guards you're going to find in all of college basketball. Isaiah Stevens, 17 points, 7 assists on 47% three-point shooting for a Colorado State team as a whole. They're shooting 37.5% from the outside. This is a Colorado State team that is not quite the same as Nevada with regards to their defensive efficiency. This is a Nevada team that they do clock in the top 75 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Colorado well outside the top 125, but this is also a Colorado State team that they've been able to do a better job of being able to guard from three-point range in a road/score environment, with opponents shooting 32.7% from three-point range when they are away from home. Meanwhile, this is a Nevada team that they have been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to lock down the three-point arc as well. It's a Nevada team that's allowing opponents to shoot just 31.4% from three-point range, but with Colorado State having so many weapons like a Patrick Cartier at 6'8", able to shoot about 44.5% from the outside, supplying a double-figure amount of points. Joel Scott, he doesn't necessarily give you three-point shooting, but he does a little bit of everything for the team. 5.5 boards, 11.5 points, a steal per contest, a block per contest, just a really good defensive stopper in general. I do think the Colorado State is going to be able to hold in there on the road, and I think that this is going to be very much a nip-and-tuck game that does come down to some late-game fouling. Both of these teams, I think, are going to have a little bit of a tough time putting the ball in the basket. I did set my total at a 146. The opener on this total was a 146.5 at that opener. Looking at the under, mostly seeing 146. So 146.5 or higher to the under, 145.5 or higher. Looking over and with Nevada, willing to take 2.5 or more with them. 739, 740 on the betting board. It is New Mexico. They are on the road. They're facing off against San Jose State. Old San Jose State is a home underdog of 9.5 to 10 points. So this game is anywhere between 156.5 and 157. And with New Mexico, I did set them as an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. New Mexico coming off of a pretty tough place to play in Air Force over the weekend, and they just completely trounced Air Force in that game. They were able to win that game going away, and this is a New Mexico team that they just have such a tremendous backcourt. You've got Jamal Mashburn Jr. along with Jalen House combining for about 31 points per contest. House does a tremendous job of being able to generate turnovers as well. 2.7 steals and about 4 assists per game. And what a lot of people forget about with this New Mexico team, they're a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. New Mexico has done a tremendous job of cutting teams off from the three-point line, 68th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And this is a San Jose State defense that has really slipped up. They are playing much more tempo this season. Last year, they were a bottom 30 team in terms of total possessions per game. This year, they're more of a mid-tempo team that is 300th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. When it comes to this bunch in New Mexico as well, they do a solid job on the glass, with JPT Toppin being able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. Nelly Jr. Joseph hovering right around 8 boards per game as well. So it's a New Mexico team that they should be able to win that battle down low. They're clocking in 60th in the country with regards to rebound rate. And then when it comes to San Jose State, the injury to Robert Viola was really a little bit of a death nail for them being able to have success down low. It's a San Jose State team that's 296 in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate after a season ago. They were one of the top teams in all of college basketball with that regard. You've got Tibet Gronair, who's able to give you about 13 points per contest. The guy with 6'8" size that is able to pull in there about 4 boards per contest and is able to let it fly from 3-point range. And this is a San Jose State team that, in terms of backcourt, it's not the world's worst. Myron Amy Jr. along with Oliver Cadiz, these two guys, they've been able to combine for about 30 or so points per contest. You've got Cardenas, who's been able to shoot about 38% from 3-point range. And each out of your top 4 scorers do shoot at least 36.5% from the outside. It's a San Jose State team that turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. I do think that the good defense of New Mexico wins out, and New Mexico, they're just lighting it up on offense. 85 plus points in each of their last 3 games, 77 plus in 4 of their last 5. And for San Jose State, they're giving it up. 75 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games surrendered, with the lone exception being against Air Force. So going to be one away with New Mexico. Set them as an 11.5 point favorite. Did set my total 153.5 with the way that New Mexico is playing defense though. So also looking at the under. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games and my DK Network write-up. 741, 742. It is Colorado, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Washington. Washington is an underdog of 1 point to 1.5 points. Total on this game, 156, and my write-up is going to be on the over. I did set my total at a 160.5. You've got yourself a rematch of something that we saw a little bit earlier in the season where Colorado won that game 73-69 on their home floor, but there were a few pieces missing really on both sides, and the biggest of which was on the side of Colorado, and that'd be Cody Williams. Cody Williams, a star freshman who's able to give you 15 points per contest, and ever since he has returned to the fold for this team, the team has scored at least 78 points in 3 out of those last 4 games, so he certainly is an elevator for a Colorado team that they are 12th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage at 39.2%, and they're 31st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, going up against a Washington team that has really been speeding up their tempo. They are now in the top 35 in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, with them being headlined by a pair of Kentucky transfers, Xavier Wheeler along Keon Brooks, who have been able to combine for 36.5 points. You've got Wheeler giving you about 6 assists per contest, does get out of sorts with about 3.4 turnovers per game, but when you play at this tempo with about 12 turnovers per game, that's honestly not too bad, and they get to go up against Colorado's team that has been getting gash from 3-point range. For Colorado, they are, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage on the road, giving up 39.9%. That is 350th in all of college basketball. Well, Washington, in their last 3 games, they've allowed opponents to go 27-59 from distance. They're 171st in the country overall in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. For Washington, they are going to be allowing a few more second chances, with still dealing with the injury to Frank Kepadog as well, so that leaves them a little bit vulnerable down low. You do have Moses Wood, who's got some size. He's able to shoot 34.5% from 3, 11.5 points per contest, and this is a Washington team that certainly has been able to put it up themselves. It's a Washington team that, coming in, they've been able to get to at least the 75-point plateau in 4 out of their last 5 games, so they're cooking with a little bit of gas. And the biggest thing for Colorado, being able to take care of the ball, they have been ranking about 320th nationally in terms of turnovers committed on a per possession basis away from home, but going up against a Washington team that they don't force a lot of turnovers, 256th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense, coupled with Colorado having Tristan DeSilva back in the fold, giving you 16 points, shooting 37% from 3. KJ Simpson being one of the most versatile players in all of college basketball, 2 steals, 4.5 assists, 5 boards, 19 points per game. I do think that Colorado gets it done, and on top of that, I do think that you get hope with this total with the way that the differential, I think, is going to work. I set my line at 4.5, so if Washington is down 5 to 6 points with a minute remaining, you know what that means: trips to the free throw line and foul. So I'm going to be one away with Colorado. I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite, and my DK Network write-up pick, that is going to be on the total over, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502, Radford hits the road face-off against UNC Asheville. Asheville does find themselves as a 5.5 to a 6 point favorite, and your total, that is 143, and with Asheville, I did set them as a 5.5 point favorite, so here at the 6, I'm going to be one take the points with Radford. This is not a Radford team that's necessarily been as good defensively this year as they have been in past years, but this is still an Asheville team that they can be had with regards to their interior defense. With regards to 3-point shooting percentage defense, it's a Radford team that has been relatively okay with that regard, but Asheville, they're the better team in this spot. They're a top 75 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Radford, 226th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up 2.5 points fewer per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than when they are at home. UNC Asheville, they're about 264th with the regard of points allowed per possession, but they do have the best player out there on the floor. That'd be Drew Pember, 29 points, 7.5 boards, 3.5 assists for a 6'11" combo player that gives you 2 blocks. Last year shot 37.5% from 3. That's down to about 31.5% this season, but I do think that Radford's big three out there in the backcourt, Brian Antoine, Daquan Smith, Keenan Giles, going to be able to help you remain lively in this one. Smith and Giles have been able to combine for 29 points, 2.2 steals per contest, and then Antoine shoots 42% from distance with about 1.6 steals per contest, and it is a Radford team that they've got one main rebounder. That'd be Justin Archer, 7.5 points, 7.5 boards. Chandler Turner has been able to give you 6 rebounds per game as well, so he's been able to do a relatively solid job, and they're going to be key. They're going up against an Asheville team that's outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, and for Asheville, they've done a better job taking care of the ball. Caleb Burgess, 5 assists to about 2.5 turnovers per game, has been big, and Nathan McMillan is able to give you some rebounds as well, but it's a Radford team that's really coming into form with regards to their defense. If you look in regulation in that game against Winthrop, because that game went to triple overtime, they gave up to 67 points, so they've now given up 67 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games in regulation. Meanwhile, it is an Asheville team that certainly has been great with their offense recently, 79 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, but I do think that Radford going to get their slower style in this one, set my total at 141, looking at the under, and at 6 plus, looking at the points with Radford. 3 of 6, 503, 3 of 6, 504. USC Upstate is going to be playing us High Point. High Point hopes to not be a low point, as 7 to 6.5 point favorites still on this game, 152.5 with High Point. I did set them as a favorite of just 5 points. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Upstate. It is a High Point team that has been a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They have been absolutely incredible with this regard. That said, this is also a High Point team that they're going to be giving it up from time to time. They're outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 243rd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against another bad defense in Upstate that's 358th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Upstate outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, so they're going to be looking to slow it down. They're going to be looking to slow down a High Point team that, I mean, my goodness, this team has actually gotten to 84 plus points in every single game this month. Meanwhile, you do have an Upstate team that I think they're going to do an okay job down low. They're going to lose a battle, but Amir Langlis is able to give you about 6.5 boards, 9 points per contest. It's an Upstate team that overall, they do shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range, with Trey Bordeaux being your main scorer, 4 boards, 4 assists, 14 points per contest, going up against a High Point team that you've got all sorts of weapons for this team. Kamani Hamilton, along with Jocelyn Bodu, have been able to combine for about 15 rebounds per game. I absolutely love the duo of Duke Miles along with Keza Gifa. These two guys have been able to combine for about 34.5 points per contest. Gifa has been able to shoot 43% from 3-point range, but for High Point, despite the fact that they play relatively up-tempo, only about 11 turnovers per game, gotten good production out of Abdoulaye Thiam, 11 to 12 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, but it is a little bit of a top-heavy team, going up against an Upstate team that you do have someone like a Floyd Redu who's been able to step up for this team. It's an Upstate bunch that all of a sudden has been able to get to at least 70 points in 3 out of their last 4 games, and even though this Upstate team has lost 4 out of their last 5 games, they've been relatively close in a lot of these games. Each of their last 3 losses by 7 points or fewer, one of which came in overtime against Winthrop, so I do think that this Upstate team is going to remain lively on their home floor. I did set this number at 5. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and I do think that High Point going to see a little bit of regression with their good 3-point shooting. I'm going to be taking a look at the under to go along with the points with Upstate. Set them as a 5-point dog. 3 of 6, 5 of 5, 3 of 6, 5 of 6. Charleston Southern is playing us to Winthrop. Winthrop is a 5.5 point to 6.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 143 and 143.5. Made Winthrop the 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Charleston Southern team as well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Honestly, they're not the world's worst team at being able to guard the 3-point arc, but they're going up against a Winthrop team that they absolutely take away the arc from you. Winthrop allowing opponents to shoot 24.2% from 3-point range at home. They are overall 25th in the country with that regard, and Charleston Southern has been seeing quite a bit of regression with regards to the 3-point shooting defense. Charleston Southern now with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage are clocking at 218th in all of college basketball. They do have Tajay Kelly down low, who's been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game, but interestingly with Charleston Southern, they're giving up about 33.5% 3-point shooting in a road/neutral environment, north of 30% at home. They do have RJ Johnson, Charleston Southern does, giving you 17 points, shooting 45.5% per 3, and all in all, it is a Charleston Southern team that they're shooting 37.5% from the outside, but a very top-heavy team. You've got the 2 guys I just mentioned, along with DJ Patrick, along with Elon Sumler. I'll give you at least 11 points per contest. Nobody else gives you north of 4.9 points per game. Meanwhile, with Winthrop, while the team isn't dominant down low, you've got Kelton Telford along with Alex Timmerman being able to combine for about 10 rebounds per game, and you've had KJ Doucette be able to shoot about 38.5% from distance, 12.5 points per game. It's a Winthrop team that does turn the ball for 13.5 times per contest, but they shoot 36% from 3-point range. You've got some relatively good facilitation for this team, and it is a Charleston Southern team that just down low, they have not been able to do a relatively solid job with regards to being able to hit the boards really, other than Tajay Kelly. You don't have much for this team as Charleston Southern, 320 26th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate, and despite the fact that Winthrop doesn't necessarily have big guns down low, they're in the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. So with Winthrop, they make them a 7-point road favorite, going to be one to lay the number, and semi-total 145 with the way that Charleston has been giving up the arc at home. So looking at Winthrop laying the points, and going to be taking a look at this 143.5 over. 306.507, 306.508. Bucknell plays host to Navy. Navy, a underdog of 3 points, totals between 136 and 136.5. With Navy, I made them the 2-point favorite, so I think that the wrong team is favored. Going to be taking a look at Navy outright on the money line. It is a Bucknell team that certainly has been able to find a little bit more offense recently. You've got two top flight guys that have been able to help out with that regard, as you've got Jack Forrest along with Noah Williamson. These two guys, they've been able to combine for in that neighborhood about 28.5 points per contest. They combine for 12 boards, and Forrest is really your main 3-point shooter at 30.5% from distance. But that said, this is a Bucknell team that's turning the ball over 13 times per contest, despite the fact that this is a team that's well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. And for Bucknell, 259th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, going up against a Navy team that they've been able to do a really good job of locking down from distance. 17th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Navy has been slipping a little bit with regards to their defense, but the offense has really been able to take form. Donovan Draper has been able to just absolutely drape teams with north of 2 steals. He's been able to chip in there about 10 points in the neighborhood, about 8.5 to 9 rebounds per game. He should be the most dominant low post player in this game, and Austin Benjini has now been able to give you about 15.5 points per contest, helping on a Navy team that overall is shooting just 29% from 3-point range, but Mac McDonald has been able to give you about 9.5 points, shooting 36.5% from the outside, and this is a Navy team that all of a sudden they're generating about 8.5 steals per contest while only turning the ball over 10.5 times per game. The turnover battle should be won by a Navy team that has given up 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, they have been able to kickstart their offense a little bit. It's a Bucknell team that they've now been able to get to at least 70 points in each of their last 4 games, but still have my question marks with regards to this offense going up against a Navy team that's one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. Did set my total 130, diving in on the under. I like Navy outright on the money line, 306.509, 306.510. Kennesaw State, we give our own to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They play us in North Alabama. North Alabama, a 6.5 to a 7-point underdog with your total 160 to 160.5. Semi-total 166. Looking at the over. North Alabama, top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game. Kennesaw State, for much of the season, has been number 1 with this regard. Now, Kennesaw State, not an abject disaster on defense. This is a North Alabama team that they aren't either, but for North Alabama, it's not too far from a disaster. They are 260th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and North Alabama getting gashed from 3-point range, 334th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, Kennesaw State, they're clocking in 265th with this regard, but at home, Kennesaw State allowing opponents to shoot only about 32.5% from 3-point range. You've got Tyrell Burden along with Simeon Kodal for this Kennesaw State team combining for north of 30 points per contest. Burden has been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. And for North Alabama, they actually should be able to hold up on the glass in this one. Both of these teams have a guy that's able to give you north of 7.5 rebounds per game. Desmond Robinson, about 7.4 boards per contest. Simeon Forrest of North Alabama has been able to give you about 8.5 boards per contest. And it's a North Alabama team that they do a relatively solid job taking care of the ball. 11.4 turnovers per game for their tempo is actually really good. Got a 40% 3-point shooter that's able to log in the neighborhood about 9 points, 5 boards, and Tim Smith Jr., while you've got Jakari Lane, KJ Johnson combining for about 28 points per contest, shooting in the low to mid-30s from 3-point range. But I do think that with Kennesaw State still having a lot of remains from last year's NCAA tournament team, being able to get about 11 points, few boards, and some good 3-point shooting, 37% out of Quincy Amadoka, I think that that's going to be enough for Kennesaw State to really be able to get this game up tempo, as North Alabama has given up 80-plus points before their last 5 games. Lone exception was against Bellarmine. Meanwhile, Kennesaw State made themselves 75-plus points in each of their last 5 games, while they have given up at least 75 points in 4 of their last 5. So I think that you're in for some happy action, fun time. I did set my total at a 166. I'm looking at the over and for North Alabama because I do think that they do a good job on the glass. They take care of the ball. I think that they hang in there. Set my line at 6, so you're at 6.5 to 7. Take the points with North Alabama along with the over. 306.511, 306.512. Queens NC plays us to Central Arkansas. Central Arkansas, an underdog of 6.5 to 7 points. Total is 163, and with Central Arkansas, I did set them as an underdog of 8.5 points. So, spot where I'm going to be looking to lay it with Queens. Queens has been well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but the Central Arkansas team is a mess. They're in the bottom 30 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're still without their top scorer from a season ago in Cameron Hunter, a guy in Elias Cato who was given the double figures. He's really been regressing as well, and this is a Central Arkansas team that overall 344th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're allowing about 13.9 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment. I do like Tucker Anderson, the 6'9" freshman, who's able to log 14.5 points, shooting 39.5% from three-point range, but it does feel like he's starting to get figured out a little bit. Meanwhile, with this Queens team, you've really got a nice big three when it comes to this team, as you've got A.J. McKee, B.J. McLaurin, along with Dayton Aubrey, who have been able to do a nice job. Aubrey and McKee combined for about 34 points, 10 boards, 6 assists. Aubrey shoots about 34.5% from distance, and McLaurin, he's your chuck it up from three-point range guy, shooting 37.5% from distance. He's able to give you 6 boards per contest. And then don't forget about the 39% three-point shooter, and Chris Ashby, who's been able to give you about 9 points per contest for Queens. 12.5 turnovers per game, with their tempo is honestly not too bad. They go up against a Central Arkansas team that is having all sorts of issues generating turnovers. They've given up 80-plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. It's a Queens team that certainly has been giving it up themselves. They've given up 75-plus points in each of their last 5 games. So I do think that you're going to be getting some big offensive outbursts in this one. Neither of these teams, I don't think, are going to be turning it over too much, but did semi-total 162.5, as Central Arkansas has been playing quite a bit more slowly this year than they have in past years. You've been able to get about 8 rebounds per game out of Ogbabanzi Itam as well, so that should help with one-and-done opportunities. But with Central Arkansas turning the ball over 13 times per contest, I do think that things get a little bit sloppy. So here to 163 plus, looking at the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Queens. Set them as an 8.5 point favorite. 306-513, 306-514. Boston U plays us Army. Army is an underdog of 6.5 to 7.5 points. So this game is 122.5. Did some high total at a 122.5. We're going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement here with regards to the numbers as I'm doing it right now. Saw an opener more around a 121.5, and at that number, I would be looking at the over. This is a Boston U team that has been a top 125 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Army, even though the rebound rate has not really been there for this team. In terms of overall rebound rate for Army, you do bring back Charlie Peterson, great name, giving you about 5 boards per contest. They're about 144th in all of college basketball with that regard, while Boston U, they're more around 134th. I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there relatively well, because now you've got Josh Govins, who's been able to take things over as a little bit of a do-it-all player for Army. He stands right around 6'4", 12 points, 5.5 boards, officially listed as a forward, despite the fact that he gives you multiple assists, 1.3 blocks per contest. He's just Mr. Everywhere, much like Miles Brewster is for this Boston U team. 10 points, 3 assists, steal and a half on 35.5% three-point shooting. Just have a little bit more outside shooting with this Boston U team. Team that shoots overall as a team about 32% from the outside. For Army, they're still clocking in more around about 39.5% overall from the floor, 56.5% at the free throw line. Though I will say they're up to about 35% three-point shooting. It has been a little bit rough for this team in general, though. Other than Scovins, you've got one other double-figure scorer in Ryan Curry. He's been able to give you about 10 points per contest. Is this game going to be defense-oriented? Yes, but at the same time, I do think that Army going to do a relatively okay job of being able to hold in this game. They've done a good job of being able to guard the three-point arc, and really both of these teams have been able to do a relatively satisfactory job there, and both of these teams do have their offensive woes. It's a Army team that's about 150th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, Boston U at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range. So at 122 or less, going to be looking at the over, and with Boston U, set them as a 6.5 point favorite. So we'll take the 7+ here with Army. 306-515, 306-516. Longwood plays host to Gardner Webb. Gardner Webb, an underdog of 6 points. Their total on this game is 142. Gardner Webb coming off of a nice comeback against Winthrop over the weekend. That said, this is still a team that ranks well outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Gardner Webb's still a team that's outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So it is a Longwood team that I said has a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Longwood, a top 50 bunch in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they don't allow a lot from the outside. They are 66th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they're one of the best mid-major teams in all of college basketball at being able to hit the glass. This Longwood team, in terms of rebound rate, 15th in all of college basketball. And for Gardner Webb, they do lose guys like Lufile Dufil, along Kareem Reed, that were very good down low for them. As a result, they have really slipped with regards to their rebounding, 251st in all of college basketball. Now, you do have Julian Sawarmo, who's been able to give you about 14 points per contest. Robert Robinson has been able to give you about 13 points per game as well. And for this Longwood team, they're not a team that's really going to go bombs away from three-point range. Waylon Napper is able to give you about 4 assists, a double-figure amount of points per game, but not a guy that's going to light it up from 3. But it is Christmas for this team, as Michael Christmas, Jonathan Massey, along with Simon Zafala, they all give you 11.1 points per contest, and between the 3 of these guys, you're getting about 20 rebounds per game, and Christmas has been able to shoot about 35.5% from three-point range. 13 turnovers per game, a little bit unsightly for the team, but Longwood, they should be able to control the glass down low. It's a Gardner Webb team that has been quite a bit better with their offense recently, 74+ points in each of their last 5 games, but this is a Longwood team that they have a allowed north of 72 points just 3 times all season long. I do think that they are going to stick Gardner-Webb in the mud. Semi-total of 135. I'm looking at the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 6.5 with Longwood, 3 of 6.517, 3 of 6.518. Lafayette, it's a road face-off against Loyola Maryland. Loyola Maryland is a 4-point home underdog, and your total on this game is 129. I did set my total at 132. I'm going to be looking at the over. It's a Lafayette team that, while they play at a bottom 75 pace in all of college basketball, they're also a bottom 125 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Lafayette, they have been able to get a little bit more out of Justin Vanderbond. Vanderbond is a true 7-footer that's been able to supply the team with 2.5 blocks, about 5 boards, 9.5 points per game. But for Lafayette, hard to lay a number like this with a team that doesn't have a single guy that gives you north of 10 points per contest. While for Loyola Maryland, you do have 2 guys in the backcourt, and D'Angelo Science along Deion Perry, who've been able to combine for 25 points, 5.5 assists per contest. Now, for this Loyola Maryland team, they are turned the ball over north of 14 times per contest, and both of these teams have been a relative disaster when it comes to guarding the three-point arc. For Lafayette, 245th in all of college basketball, the guards opponents' three-point shooting percentage going up to 36% at home. Loyola Maryland, 310th in the country, but they allow opponents to shoot north of 37% from distance in a road/shoot-record environment. At home, that goes down to about 33.3%, so they've been able to do a little bit of a better job there when it comes to this Lafayette team as well. They have been turning the ball over north of 12 times per contest, despite the fact that they are one of the slower teams in all of college basketball. And this is a Lafayette team that they generate a few turnovers. They're about 175th in all of college basketball in that regard. And it is a Loyola Maryland team that's not going to be forcing a lot of turnovers of their own. But I do think that with Loyola Maryland, having Golden DK down low, being able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, that's going to be able to give them a little bit of an advantage on the glass. Both of these teams have been very much all over the place with regards to their offense. But I do think that this is a number that's went a little bit too far. It's a Lafayette team that I do think is going to continue to have their issues just guarding in general. This has been a bunch that has also been able to get to at least 69 points in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Loyola Maryland, they themselves have had their triumphs with regards to their offense, 70-plus points in 3 of their last 5 games. So I do think that this is too low of a total, especially with the fact that you might be getting some late game fouling. Set my total at 132, looking over, and with Lafayette, going to make them a 2.5-point favorite. So take the points with Loyola and the over, and we're wrap things up with 3 of 6.519, 3 of 6.520. American plays us Holy Cross. Holy Cross is an underdog of 11 points. Total on this game is 140.5, and I did set my number at 10.5. So 11 is my buy point on Holy Cross. Holy Cross has been pretty wholly awful with regards to their defense. They are well outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there with an American team that they themselves are outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Matt Rogers has really good versatility for this American team, being able to supply the team with 15 points, 6 at boards, shooting 36% from 3 points. And American last season was turning the ball over north of 14 times per game. That's down to more like 9.5 to 10 turnovers per game. You got Joe Octave, who's been able to give you for this Holy Cross team about 15 points, 6 at boards per contest, as they're really just doing it by committee. Joe Nugent has now been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game, so you've gotten some relatively good versatility. Holy Cross, so about 312th in all of college basketball, regards to rebound rate, going up against an American team that they are in the top 100 with that regard, but this is also an American team that's well outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Holy Cross, they are shooting about 34.7% from 3-point, despite the fact that they're dealing with the injury to Bo Montgomery. You still have Will Batchelor. He's been able to shoot about 38.5% from the outside. He's been able to heat up recently as well, giving the team 8+ points in each of the team's last 5 games. So I do think that Holy Cross going to be able to hit enough outside shots to hold in there. Got a pair of teams that are well outside the top 275 with regards to total possessions per game. And it's a Holy Cross team that's been a little bit better defensively as well. 72 points for fear surrendered in 2 of their last 3 games. Meanwhile, this is an American team that has allowed 72 points or less in each of their last 5 games. So it did set my total 136.5, diving in on the under and at 11+, taking the points with Holy Cross, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Drake Toll over at the Locked On Big 12 podcast for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline, 19_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.